The November 16th work session of the ZBA. If there are any members of the public who are attending, this is not, you will not have an opportunity to speak. This meeting is purely for a discussion by the members of the board. The first item on the agenda is the board's consideration of the FEIS for 416 Waverly Avenue, case number 15-8-2018. All right, somebody who has something to say about, give their comments on the FEIS or otherwise. Did Meg send comments? Did anybody, did Ashley or Brittany, did Meg send any comments to the village?
You mean Greta?
Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry, Meg. Yes, correct.
No, I have not received any comments from Greta.
Okay, I thought she was going to, I just wondered.
I didn't receive anything either.
Okay.
Would you like me just to give an update of where we are? Just as a reminder for the board? Okay.
Please.
So where we are in the process is the applicant has submitted a preliminary draft FEIS. At this time, you have received comments from AKRF as well as Kellard Sessions on the completeness of the FEIS. And now we are soliciting comments from the board members because you as lead agency need to agree with all of the conclusions and the way that issues are resolved within the FEIS, because it is essentially your document. So if there's any language within the document or any ways that the issues are framed that you disagree with, now is the time to discuss that so we can reframe it.
Now, as I recall, AKRF, prepared a memo on the FEIS for us.
Yes.
Now, do we can accept it or we can incorporate it as our comments, right? Correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so board members, why don't we start with, just to have a place to start with the comments that AKRF submitted to us on the FEIS, which I'm trying to find. I had forgotten to pull them up before the meeting.
Chair, I have a procedural question, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead, please.
I don't know if we want to do it. I just want to discuss the procedure. We can either do it with council, if that's the way to do it, or we can just do it here, whatever your pleasure. I don't know.
If it's something that we can discuss, just procedure, that probably has to be discussed in the meeting. If there's a legal question, then we should go into.
These are legal. There are legal questions in terms of on the FEIS, on a supplemental one, and on the findings, and where we're just so we understand the framework, because there's a little bit of questions I have with that. They're legal. They're not really. They're not effectuating a procedure. They're more trying to understand it.
So why don't you where we are in the process right now is the board hasn't accepted the FEIS as complete. So if there was some material that you feel was not sufficiently addressed, that can be incorporated into the FEIS. You wouldn't need to do a supplemental EIS. You could just ask that be incorporated into the FEIS.
Okay, I checked the regs on that. Okay, fine. I thought if a new issue has come up, I mean, I had one, but we can deal with that as we go through it, or whatever you want. And then I wanted to understand that Charlie, as I understand it, this is our document, the FEIS, correct?
Yes, at the end of the day, this will be your document.
Right. So we can either utilize this to make our final one, or we can just go along with what is. We can actually have our own prepared, if I understand, correct?
Yes, you could, within the bounds of the environmental record. So
right.
If you have questions or you need more information from the applicant, now's the time to ask. And then once you gather that information from the applicant, you can use that information to come to a basis on your conclusions within the FEIS, and then subsequently the secret finding statement.
Right. Now, as I understand it, do we also need a motion if we're going to take more than 60 days on this?
So the FEIS, according to the regulations, should be finalized 45 days after the public hearing, which of course were passed, right?
Right.
The lead agency, who is this board, does have the ability to extend that period, but we should be cognizant of the fact that we, shouldn't waste any time, and we should, since we have gone past that 45 days, we should, give the applicant a date by which we can expect to have the FEIS finalized. However, if you want more information, may take the applicant more time to get that information. I think they likely have to still respond to Ashley's review memo, so we still need that information. So once we get all the information, we can kind of estimate how much time it will take to finalize the FEIS, notify the applicant of how much time we'll need, and then we'll work towards finalizing the FEIS.
Okay, no motion is necessary because I was looking at the regs. You don't need to make a motion on this to push it back?
Wait, a motion, you're talking about a motion to extend to?
Yeah,
take
yeah,
longer?
I'm just asking you.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to know what understand.
Right, I'm sorry, that's what I had referred to, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you certainly can. It doesn't hurt. It protects the record.
I think if that's what, David, I think if that's what you want to do, we need to do it. If you think you need extra time or something, we definitely need to do that.
Well, yeah, I don't know how long it will take because it is dependent in part upon what we elect to do in terms of the preparation of one or as well as what they provide. So maybe we should move, what do you think, Castle, if we move to 45 or 60 days and we'll revisit it then?
Yeah, I think, you can make that motion, or you can make a motion to extend the time period for, completing the FEIS until the additional information requested from the applicant is provided. And then from there, you can see how much time you would need to digest that information and finalize the FEIS. So instead of, putting a date on it, you would just put it until the time where the applicant provides their additional information as requested by the board.
But then we would need time from that, correct?
Yeah, and once you get that additional information, you could invite the applicant back to discuss that additional information. And then once you have it, then you start preparing the FEIS.
There's a lot of flexibility in the seeker language for this, because I don't think you need to set a hard deadline, because it says the last date for preparation and filing of the final EIS may be extended under the following circumstances. A, if it is determined that additional time is necessary to prepare the statement adequately, or B, if problems with the proposed action requiring material reconsideration or modification have been identified. So in this case, if you're finding that it's not adequately addressing one of your concerns that you've raised previously, you can extend it until that issue is adequately addressed.
Okay. Well, I don't want to pin us down, that's all. I mean, I have no problem. If we don't need a motion, that's fine. If so, I mean, because I think we have certainly not a long way, but we have ways to go.
Well, David, can I make a suggestion? Why don't we discuss it today?
Okay.
Then when we've decided we're done discussing it today, let's kind of summarize what we need and make a motion so that we have something on the record. And it doesn't have to be a date certain. We can do extend until they've provided this information, and we'll review and make a decision as to how long we need or something like that. I don't know that we have to, based on what was said by Charlie and Ashley, I don't believe we need to put a specific timing, but I guess, so let's discuss it now so we have, so we're at a certain point in the review. Brian, have you had a chance to look at it? I don't know whether you would.
I've looked at all of it.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so then
I've looked at all of it. I agree with your comments, and I understand what David is saying as well. I do believe that, given the fact that we had comments by the board members who are here and answers by the applicant, I really think that it would be beneficial if we had perhaps some feedback from the board members to see whether or not those answers were adequate. If not, then of course, we can ask for more information. I do not want to duplicate anybody's efforts to date. I certainly have questions of my own, which I think are really in addition or in tandem to the questions that have been asked already. So I would think just by logical order, if people were able to respond to what has already been asked and answered, we can go from there. But yes, I definitely have content, and I'll provide it whenever you want.
okay, so let's do this, take one at a time. So let's start with Ashley's AKRF's memo. Does anyone have any disagreement with anything in AKRF's memo? And if not, do we want to adopt it as the determination of a partial, or adopt it? We don't have to adopt it until we're done, obviously. But at some point, we should either say because AKRF's memo is a memo to us. It's not right, Ashley?
Yes, it's a memo to the ZBA pointing out issues that we found with the FEIS and what we recommend to be changed.
Right. So presumably, I'm assuming, I mean, I thought it was a very well done, and I would accept them all. I'm not saying that's all we're doing, but I would accept all of AKRF's comments and require that the FEIS incorporate all of the corrections, changes submitted by AKRF. Does anyone disagree with that?
Well,
Is that as far as that goes? I know that's only going a limited way, but let's try and do this orderly. Does anyone disagree with that?
Aren't there some that are responses by the applicant that are in here? I guess my question is, are there not some issues in here that have their comments and then a response?
Right, so we commented on the way that the applicant responded to some comments and suggested how they should be revised to be more in the voice of the zoning board. But if you disagree with how we've characterized your voice, then we should change it.
All right, so I'm not sure what you're asking, David.
I got the answer. The answer is that this represents their response
I think that
and your comments on their response. Am I right? Yeah, I understand. I'm sorry. Okay, that wasn't as good. Yeah, I mean, I just, my only concern is
I'm sorry.
we went into an issue by addressing, by adopting this. I just don't want to limit us, but that's fine.
No, David, what I'm saying is if we
Be incorporated.
accept, what I'm saying is that would be incorporated in whatever else we do. We did the same thing on the DE. When we commented on the draft EIS, we did the same thing. We essentially took AKRF's written memo and incorporated that into our vastly additional, we had extensive additional comments, and the AKRF memo was a portion of our comments. So that's essentially what I'm saying here, that the AKRF memo would be a portion of whatever else we're going to say.
Okay, I understand you. I had just approached it differently. I just made my own notes on the whole thing, but
That's fine too.
That's fine
too.
No,
I'm not, of course, we can go through it. Everybody goes, okay, Meg, you look like you were starting to say something, but we're having trouble getting it with your.
Chair, if I could just ask a question, maybe.
Sorry, can I ask a question? I have a question.
Oh,
Hang on, Dave. Let Meg, because she seems to be having trouble. So let's give her a moment.
please.
Yeah, go ahead, Meg.
Okay, wave at me if you can't, if I froze, because it's a little choppy for me. I would like to know the goal of the end of our discussion this evening. I understand that we are going to review the new information, what we heard from the applicant last time. We might have more questions, things that we found. And then what would be the next step? Are we at this point trying to wrap up what our FEIS is?
Froze.
Or is this still kind of free flowing and we're going to share with HRF questions and then we're going to wait for the applicant to respond? And if that's the case, why are we voting on whether to adopt or not? I don't have a problem. I think the AKRF memo is great and very, very helpful. It just seems why. Yeah.
We're losing you. Periodically, you're going in and out, so we're not catching a full, we're not catching you fully. It sounds like what you're wondering is what we're going to be doing at the end of the day. Well, we haven't come to the conclusion of what we're doing, but the sense that I've gotten so far is that we have a lot of comments and that we want some additional time to consider the FEIS, or we may want to instead submit have additional questions for the applicant and need additional information from the applicant. And if so, that's what the conclusion of the meeting is.
Right. And so, yes. Oh, so what I'm saying is, when are we to make that, I would think that coming out of tonight, we should see if we're going to ask for more information.
Correct.
It just seems, I don't know why we're stopping this memo now. It might be impacted by some of the other questions we get and some other information. I think the memo is really helpful. I don't know that I wouldn't adopt it. I don't know why we're stopping to adopt it now.
Okay, you're still coming in and out, but I'm not saying we stop at the memo. What I'm saying is, if we accept the memo, that's fine. That's got a certain set of comments. What we are doing is, if we have additional comments on the FEIS, we are adding to it. Otherwise, we have to go through point by point everything in the AKRF.
I just don't know there.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I just don't know why we have to adopt it right now. We have.
We're not
time in the future to
adopting it.
adopt it. Why
We're
don't-
not adopting it now.
I thought that's what you just said, Robin.
Yeah, I thought that's what you said. Yeah.
I didn't say we were voting on anything tonight. I don't know that we're voting on the memo.
I think what
said
Robin
we're-
was saying,
I got confused.
what Robin was saying was she just wants to incorporate it into the FEIS, so it will be on the record as part of the FEIS. It's not the end all be all. It's just going to be things that will be incorporated in the FEIS as the record. We're not adopting anything.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah,
I
okay.
wanted to make sure that
I just
nobody-
don't understand the, okay. This
I
is
want to
very
make sure that
frustrating.
nobody disagrees with the AKRF memo, because if anybody of the board members disagrees with anything in the AKRF memo, then we have to go through it point by point to flesh out what we're doing. And I didn't want to do that. So I was hoping that we could all agree that, yes, we're fine with those comments. Then if we do provide additional comments to the applicant or ask for additional info, the AKRF memo would be part of that. That's all. That's what I'm trying to do. Because if you disagree with anything in it, then we can't do that and we have to go through it.
Well, just to voice up on that for a moment, there are things in there, I mean, there's nothing in there to disagree with, but it may not be.
Correct.
We may have supplemental, it may go further or separate.
That's what we did. That's what we did the last time. When we did it on the DEIS, we took the menu and added many, many, many other comments. So, okay, so let's do it piece by piece. David, do you want to start with your comments on the FEIS or additional information?
Sure. I don't know.
Why
I
don't we
had
do
the
that?
one question I'll go back to for a minute because I just took a look at the reg. The reason I'd mentioned a supplemental EIS because under, was it 617? Hang on a second, 617.9A7. And Charlie had mentioned earlier about the record. The record doesn't have something in it here, and this is for newly discovered information or a change in circumstances. And it says during the review process of the EIS, we can ask for a supplemental on that aspect. My point on that is that what I have raised at the last meeting was that subsequent, as I believe, to the preparation of this, there was a flood, or a hurricane came through the area, and there was flooding at the premises. And from what I visually was able to see and what they've acknowledged, there was a lot of damage there. To me, that raises two questions. Number one, the need to address the nature of the damage so that it could be mitigated and dealt with, because this was unusual and it's got to be dealt with. How can you want to avoid that? I mean, not everybody had a flood. And that's been one of the concerns. The other issue it raises is that there hasn't that much new construction there. The most recent new construction I'm aware of any significance would have been the first phase of this, which was the first building. And they say, and even in this one at some point, well, we comply with everything. We comply with FEMA, we comply with the regs and the code. But the issue isn't that. Whatever they did when they built this one a few years ago didn't seem to work. It certainly didn't avoid the problem. I mean, many people suffered by it, I understand, but this was new construction. And the issue is, I would like them to address, and as I said the last meeting, I would like them to address the particular problems that they encountered during this last storm, why, what the extent of it, the nature of it, and why, given the fact that they had just put up a building there, that was basically going to be, this is part of the expansion of, or part of it. I don't want to get into an issue of whether it's segmentation or not. I think that's apparent, but I think that the flooding there becomes, they mention flood insurance here, for example. They say that on 1.9, they say and then I guess Roman 3D1, they claim that the design is compliant with FEMA and the Mamaroneck development requirements, and that they're going to resolve it through existing drain site planning, the site, what they say, got to do with grading, I guess. The point is this: I have a big problem with this because I've seen the damage that took place there on a newly constructed. So first of all, I don't think we're limited to having them. The fact that they're compliant or not is of interest, but it's not determinative. You have to sometimes go way beyond that to mitigate. The other is we've got this entire problem that's been sustained on a part of this project. And the first part of this project, which was the 40,000 plus whatever it is, the first building. So I'd like to understand the nature of that, why it occurred, because all we're going to do now is all they want to do now is add another building. And I assume it's going to be that. So I'd like that addressed. Charlie, if you don't think, the reason I suggested supplemental was from reading the regs and the handbook on it. It looks to me like this is, and then you reminded me of it when you said, we have to go and look to, it has to be in the record. Well, the record doesn't have anything about this. It couldn't have because of the temporal nature of it. So if I read the supplemental that says to address that the lead agency may require a supplemental EIS limited to a specific significant adverse impacts not addressed or inadequately addressed that arise from, and that goes the change in the proposed project, newly discovered information, or a change in circumstances. So that's my only question. I don't care how they deal with it, but it in my opinion, it has to be dealt with.
Charlie, I think that's a good question. Please say whether we should get a supplemental EIS or whether this can be added, incorporated into the current FEIS.
Sure. I would say it should be added or incorporated into the FEIS. And because if you look at the secret handbook on page 138, where it talks about newly discovered information requiring an SEIS, it has to be a genuinely new information so that it would not have been known at the time of the application. So the flooding event occurred in September, but certainly flooding in this area is not a new fact that has been discovered. I imagine there was flooding during Hurricane Irene and maybe after that, and flooding was addressed in some nature in the documents. So to the extent the board would like that expanded upon, certainly that can be done. You know, an example of newly discovered information would be after the public hearing and so forth, the municipality was informed that it was a Native American burial ground, and there was no way of knowing that before. That would be something that might require an SCIS. But flooding in this area certainly is not a new discovery. It has happened in the past, and it was addressed in the DEIS. To the extent it wasn't addressed to the satisfaction of the board, that can be expanded upon in the FEIS.
Well, I'm not aware, just so we're clear, I'm not aware, I know there's a flooding area. I'm not aware, this is of new construction that's been in place recently. This is several years old, only 3 years old, that's sustained that kind of damage. And particularly where that's part of the project. But if this can be required to be dealt with in this, the reason I say this, we did not know about that. At the time of the FEIS, we were unaware of the nature of the damage sustained by a pertinent part of the project.
Dave, if I can,
Ever.
I think that helps us justify keeping the FEIS open until we have all of our questions and queries satisfied. And that helps us extend the time that we need to review the project. So I don't necessarily think that we need a separate one.
Sure.
You're right, it wasn't knowledge that we had then, which justifies us finding out more information about what damage was done and how the new construction would fare under similar circumstances. So I think it's a very good thing to include in the FEIS.
I guess then that just requires new information, correct? Charlie, that's not a problem then, right? Okay, fine. As long as that's not a problem.
Right, because we do need new information here.
Yeah.
We need all the details on what actually happened to the building in
Why?
the flood, how much water there was and what happened so that we can measure we can look at Dave's point, which is this was new construction that was supposed to have been built post
Sandy,
creation of the flood zone regulations and the FEMA regulations. Nevertheless, if it was damaged this extensively, what will that mean for the construction of the extension, enlargement, whatever it's called?
And I think it's a very reasonable ask by this board for that information. And again, I really do believe that it justifies extending the time that we have to review the FEIS, because the whole point of this meeting is to determine whether or not the FEIS is complete enough for us to, do any kind of an adoption to it.
yeah,
So I would just add that I think that the comments on the flood that you're raising right now are consistent with the flooding comments that have been raised in the past on the DEIS and are partially addressed in the FEIS. And so asking for them to be included as part of the FEIS and asking specifically about where the flood levels were during Ida, because there were questions on the DEIS about how high the base flood elevation would be and how the building was going to be designed to withstand floods. All these questions that you're asking now are consistent with those. I think it would be valuable for the applicant to provide more information in
I
that
believe
vein.
I had believe that two months ago, I had asked the applicant for that at a public meeting.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. Did you hear from the applicant on that at all?
So they have responded in the draft FEIS, but the draft FEIS was submitted, I think, before
Yeah.
Ida.
No, but it was after that I raised it with them. I raised it, it would have
So
been,
we haven't
Over.
received a revised FEIS yet. At this point, applicant has received our comments, AKRF's comments and Kellogg Sessions comments, and they've been awaiting the comments from the zoning board. So after tonight, the applicant will be able to take all the comments that you've raised this evening and the comments of the consultants and go back and revise the document, prepare a red line, and resubmit it to the board for review.
okay,
Okay, Dave, anything else? Since you're going
Sure.
to see first.
sure.
Please go on.
Yeah, if you want more, I'll give you more. Yeah,
Well,
and by the way,
wait.
on that, and on that one, I'm interested not just in the nature and extent of the damage that may have taken place and on the height of the water. I'm interested in why it occurred, why it was not able by their own following and their compliance, why it was not avoided. And lastly, how would they propose, how is this different in terms of how can they now propose this so that it would not take place? Question I had on this is on the zoning compliances. They use the word existing a lot, and that's a confusing word here, because does existing mean pre the first part of this project or after it? And when you compare it, I in terms of variances, that becomes question. They talk about the variances they need. I'd like them to identify what variances are on the property already so that we can really address that clearly, because I think total variances and the departures. I think also they need to address the parking. They have said that they may consider, I have some notes on this, they may consider, they say at parking at 3, Roman numeral 3A14, they note it is likely that spaces will be assigned to the various users. I suggest that this is the time. And they have to divide. They've mentioned the different uses on the property. One is the school usage. One is the for the workshop, for their operations. The other is they need to assign it, because that has always become a problem after the fact. A year down the road, someone else takes the space and what have you. As far as the hazardous materials, I thought that was inadequate. I thought it was an inadequate discussion of the levels. It's been raised. I've asked that before. Mitigation is limited. They talk about a barrier. They say demolition may result in asbestos, lead, or PCBs, which may require abatement and or proper disposal. That's at 1-8. And my point on that is, well, then look at it now. That's what this is about. Look at it now so that you don't, during the commencement of this, say, oh, look at this problem. It's theirs land now. It should be able to be told, I would think. Why can't it be addressed now? What tests are necessary? With regard to flooding, let's see, they talked about flood insurance. They say I think this is very crucial, and it's at 1-9. They claim that the design is compliant with FEMA and Mamaroneck development requirements. And my understanding is that's interesting and it's certainly required. So it has to comply. We're talking about what else has to be done. And that's one of my concerns is what else? The fact that you're compliant, if that's all it was, you turn in a notification, certification, we are compliant. Thank you. But that doesn't let you go. It's not a controlling thing. There's no structural foundation plan, they indicate. That's a 3, Roman numeral 3, D4. Seems awful important. It's not something later on, that's an issue. We don't have the village engineer's response that's referred to at Roman numeral 3, D5. As far as the visual impacts go, there's no real comparison. I looked at the photographs. I mean, the areas, it's nice, except they don't show anything in the vicinity. I think that visual is an enormous concern. It's raised by people all the time, and I think there needs to be this. They haven't responded or discussed. There was one of the questions you raised was in there. They say they're removing all demolition of all buildings are being demolished. I assume that that's just the type of what they mean is except for the existing storage facility. My concern on segmentation has come up. I think there's no question that this is segmentation. I think at parts of their report, their draft, they were very direct and openly acknowledged that by saying it was they got a pause deck. It was too expensive, so they cut the project in half. 2 years later, and they do the years, but 2012, they made the application then for a new one. They dropped it in size. It gets built in 2015 and 16, and in 2018, they come in for the other. They then say it is an addition. I think it's clearly segmentation, which is why it's all being considered. They said there's no question in their own language. They talk about it being an operative cohesively with the existing storage. Let's see. There's a question there about precedent. They say precedent is not an environmental factor to be considered. Something that came up. I think that's somewhat. There's some merit to that, but it's also some parts of it that are disingenuous in the sense that obviously the growth inducing aspect of this in the vicinity in the area, particularly with our having to comply with and follow our own precedents, we are going to then be, is this what we are setting as a standard and what will effect that will have on the neighborhood? I'm just looking here. We'll find this one. Oh, I asked a question and it was referred to in here. I had asked whether they had to respond and go to on the VOCs that they found, whether they had to report that. I'd asked them that at a meeting. You've referred to that, but they haven't answered it. They're not sure. Well, if they're the applicant, they need to be made sure. In other words, my question was, there are some types of things when you find some petroleum products and some other things you are obligated to report. There's an error in Roman numeral 3 K2. It says the first application was withdrawn in March 2009. It was not. It was pause decked in 2010. Let's see, a couple more notes. I should point out, I'm very concerned on the whole hazardous materials. That's been a very tough area for it. There are engineers assigned from DEC and I believe possibly EPA, but I don't know how they did the testing. I thought we were going to have an engineer's report saying this is where it should be. This is what is on parking. They claim they have 52 now. They want 26 proposed, which is 72. I just don't know how they got there. I don't know what the requirement is in terms of for parking for what they're now going to have, where they're going to have schooling. I guess they're doing a project with the high school, they said, and with the offices. And are they counting variances they've already received? Are we just using the same thing twice? Going back to really quickly, I'm just seeing my notes here on 1.8 hazardous materials. They say demolition may result in asbestos, lead, or PCBs, which may require abatement or proper disposal. That should be addressed. Mitigation should be addressed. Flooding is not addressed adequately, other than to say compliance, and we're going to grade. Visual impact I touched on. I don't think they've dealt with that. Yeah, I mean, segmentation is clear. I mean, I'm not going to quibble with them. They can say what they like.
Wait a minute, David. This is our FEIS. So
Yeah,
you're
right.
saying, I don't want to quibble with them, but it's our concern if we believe
point.
this was segmentation, as some
If
of
this-
us, those of us who
Yeah.
may have been around the first time, do.
Well, they're pretty
What do we do?
straightforward about it. They just don't conclude. I mean, the chair, you're absolutely correct. They just don't reach the conclusion, but they say, oh, well, we came in, we got the pause deck. We said, no, that's too expensive. So now we'll do this. And then it's finished. And, 48 months later, here's our new plans. And guess what? It happens to be approximately the same size. Yeah,
I could just interject to provide some clarity on the segmentation issue.
please.
So segmentation is cured by this process in that the DEIS should evaluate the entire development, right, including what was previously constructed.
Right.
So to the extent that has happened in the board's eyes, then segmentation, had been cured. Let's say if they reduced the project to avoid a pause deck, years back, like they did, and then they came in with a type 2 expansion of it that may or may not have environmental impacts. That would have been segmentation because a proper complete environmental review wouldn't have been conducted. But the DEIS process should be designed in a manner that it cures the segmentation issue. So
But this didn't.
That's an excellent point. I think that just
No,
underscores
but
the need.
we have to consider it as a total.
Right.
That's the cure. And that's just the basic thing. Regardless of what the applicant says or what we say, it is one project site.
But we
That is
don't have
one-
all the
Well,
information.
that's the flooding problem I get. See, I
We
get
don't
the
have all
problem.
the information that we would need as a whole. In other words, the impact of the 100%, I mean, they're still doing 100%, so I suppose it is, from that perspective, it is the same thing. So at
That's
least from
what
that
we're,
perspective.
that's really, I believe, it's just my opinion, and I'm responding specifically myself because I wasn't on the first time around. Is that we just have to look at this project as if the original building was not built, in order to ensure that we don't go along improperly if we believe this is segmentation. I personally believe that it's one project. It's one owner, it's one property. To me, it's one project. So we should, in my opinion, just be looking at this from scratch as if the original building doesn't exist.
I concur with you completely. I just think that underscores the need for the flooding problem, because that part has had a huge problem. The original problem. Yes, no, I agree with you.
Right, and given that, I think the flooding is ever more so, because what they've done is they've all added a lot of building, although not necessarily too much impervious surface, but they have added a lot of building.
Those are my notes.
Okay, Brian, or let me go with Meg. Meg, do you want to?
Yeah, can you hear me? I'm using my telephone. Is that good?
That works.
Yes, it's working well.
Very good. And thank you, Ashley, for helping me set this up. Yeah, I want to piggyback on what Dave said about the parking. They don't have a parking table now that shows the new uses. They seem to be using the same 26 number. And when I started looking at the parking, it made me start to think about what the uses are. I know that they listed as a woodworking shop, which I believe would be fabrication or something. But actually, when I read about it, it seemed like they are going to have classes or have kids working there. And I'm not sure that that's a permitted use. That does seem to be some kind of school or something. I'm not sure how to consider that. So I couldn't see where that would be a permitted use in this area. Also, I don't have much information about the incubator. I suppose that fits under the use of a professional office or building, a professional offices. but I don't know how many stations are in there. Are they broken up into different workstations or offices within the incubator, to get a sense of how much parking is required for that one. I also, help me out here if I am not reading the report correctly, but I'm a little confused. On page 1-3, early on, they're talking about how they reduced the FAR with the new design. So the FAR reduced from 2.43 to 2.11 is what I see on page 1-3. In other places, though, they talk about the FAR being 1.34 now and 1.91 being proposed. I don't know if they're talking about total FARs or they're talking about the percentage of the FAR. So I got confused of what's being put in the tables or how it's being described.
Yeah, I think in the AKRF memo, that point about the inconsistency.
Yeah, there seems to be an error somewhere in there.
Is discussed. So I think, yes.
Yeah, so it's a lot different to think about a total FAR of 2.11. It is just different than thinking about 1.91. I also see that they discussed that they will be compliant with FEMA and what the village requires. And they talked about getting their floodplain permit from the planning board. I don't think that that is the board that approves floodplain development permits. That's actually the floodplain mitigation officer of the village. That is a separate application that should be applied for. In their table, when they were listing all the other permits that they need, table 1-5, they didn't mention that they need to apply for a floodplain permit. I also would like to see, did they ever get an approved floodplain development permit for the existing building? So as we're looking at what happened there or not, what were they required to do originally when they built that building? Small point on page 31, but I guess it's going to be our FEIS. So they refer to us as a town rather than a village. That's a small, I guess we're not going to do that.
But we have to point it out so that we know, not that they know it can't be in there.
So they know that we're a village. Other places they refer to us as a village, but that seemed to be a town. I think I'm getting pretty close to comments that I wanted to make there. I'm just checking. Nope, that's pretty much what I had to say. Thanks.
Meg, you said page 31?
No, I don't think I said page 31. I said,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I was referring to tables. Page 1-3 is what one thing I said. 1-3.
I got you. No, 1-4.
It's table 1-3 on page.
Yeah, page 1-6, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank
The
you.
numbering leaves a lot to be.
Sorry. Also, I had one last question. They have suggested what uses they're going to use this for, that they showed us in the floor plan that a certain part is the office, certain part is the storage units, the additional storage units, is going to have the incubator. I'm not sure when we go to giving them variances, are we doing it for a retail business, for a business office? What will make them have to keep those uses in that space? They're building a huge space. Let's say they sold the building and it's to another permitted use. It seems as the building as of right, would that change? Would that be allowed? It could be something that needed a lot more parking. So I'm not sure of how we
Contingency?
confirm what the uses are going to be at that point.
I don't think that's different than an existing. When the village gives a permit and a building is built, and it's built because they're going to have a certain kind of office or a certain restaurant or a certain something, as of right or not, and then they change the use, they can't get a permit for if there's any construction. Now, the problem is you don't need a permit simply to change use. And that's where the problem comes up, because if they're doing construction, they would need a permit from the village. But if they don't need any permits, construction type permits, then they don't need to go back to the village. So the question is, what about the use? And I think we can, in the variance point, since we're granting the variances for a project and the EIS is for this project as shown, I think we have to make it clear that it's for this project as shown, and that changes to the use, and maybe changes to the use will require or may require, because we don't know, additional consideration and review, whether from an environmental impact or from a variance with respect to the entire project. So I think
Well,
it's
I would like to know if that's possible, because also I think that just weighs in on when we start to calculate how many parking spaces. That's usually why you go to, it's an office building, the minimum requirements in the village. They say, but we're only going to have 2 people in there, so we're reducing the parking. But you have to remember that you are approving an office building that could possibly be populated by a certain amount. I think Ashley had something to say, so
Yeah,
just bringing up this as a point.
I just wanted to add that within the existing code for the village of Mamaroneck in 342-75B, any change of use or intensity in use other than relation to a 1 or 2 family dwelling that will affect the characteristics of the site or increase the requirements under this code in terms of parking, loading, circulation, drainage, utilities, landscaping, or outdoor lighting does require site plan approval from the planning board. So that is a trigger that's already in the village code that
Okay,
would
but if
require something to come back.
But if they're, thank you very much. If they're considering this to be an office building and they say, well, we only have 2 people working there. So, but now they're going to change it to an office building and there's going to be 20 people working in it, in a open concept office or something like that. Is the building department really going to decide that that's, are they really going to count the number of people? It's an office building. They didn't change the use. They didn't seem to, usually when we hear about it, if they change the use to something that's clearly now it's a gym with teams in it or something like that, the intensity definitely changed. I just wanted to flag that I don't think we can stick to the numbers like only 2 people in this office and only 4 people in that office, but we should be thinking about how many people could fit into an office as we go forward.
we've had that problem before, Meg. You may remember there was an office also in this district. Somebody was building for themselves and we had the same issue. So it is a not uncommon issue, but I think which is maybe the way we should be approaching these is because it's something like a restaurant is a given, you know, I'm just thinking of other uses, but an office building, whether it has, an office building was more fully occupied pre-pandemic. If you look at most office buildings, they were more fully occupied pre-pandemic than now. Just a normal, any office building. And I think what we should be doing is looking, what's the maximum or in other words, so if the village code requires, and I don't have the code open in front of me, so I don't know. The parking we should look at, and you're right, in a way, and that's what we came up with on that other one. We need to look at the parking in a way. So the fact that they say they're going to have 2 employees is not the gauge of what we're doing.
Yeah, so we need to see the parking table with minimum code requirements for these different uses, and they have to figure out what their woodworking classes, what kind of use that is.
But Robin or Meg, if you could just take a look at page 1-7. I'm not following something. They've got here off-street parking.
That's incorrect.
Unfortunately, so I can't look.
Okay.
But
That's Dave, that's incorrect. They have 121 marked. It should be 137 as required.
No, they have 137 of what I'm looking at. It
On
says
page-
required.
Table 1-4.
1-7. No, it's above 1-4. It's above it.
Oh.
You see above that, it says off-street parking 137.
Right, and then in the next table, they say
Yeah, I know.
off-street parking 121.
Right, but then they say they have existing on the above table of 52.
Yes,
And then they say they want to go to 26.
yes.
yeah, they're going down. That was what they told us. They were going way down on parking because they said they didn't need it. They never used it.
Right, it currently exists with the other buildings because now they're looking at the entire plot.
Well, they're saying there's 52 now with the.
Right.
Right, and they were
Right,
said
but
they
those-
said
yeah.
when they were here, they said that who knows which meeting, but they essentially said that because of the use that they're going to have in the future, and again, that was the original, the storage before they
Right, that was the storage.
proposing all these new uses, as Meg pointed out. And therefore,
Yeah.
they were only giving parking as needed for the storage, and therefore they said, well, we don't need as many parking spaces because storage doesn't use that in our experience, and this is what our records show. So the new uses we have to, which we didn't really, they have to consider the parking and the traffic from those other uses. And interestingly, I think, and I'm sorry, I don't, but the traffic study that they did was based on their original plan for this site. To the extent they've changed the plans for this site in terms of uses, have they changed the parkings, the traffic study? And if they haven't changed the traffic study, then I would say, do they need to update/revise the traffic study in order to reflect some of these other uses that they're now proposing?
They did provide some updated trip generation in the FEIS.
Oh, okay. To reflect all the new uses they're proposing?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Where?
On page 1-10, there's a summary. And the levels that they're estimating for the revised use are low enough that it doesn't trigger a full traffic analysis. They're
But
estimating.
are
How
those,
is that? How is that it doesn't? I'm just curious.
because don't you look at the full, because they didn't need one before? Again, are you adding to it, or they're saying the totality of
They're
it?
saying a total of 9 morning peak hour vehicle trips and 11 p.m. peak hour trips
From all of the uses?
from all of the uses.
Oh, that says we, so it says we say it will result in the generation of 9 a.m. peak hour vehicle trips.
Yeah.
We definitely need to know how many stations there are in that incubator or how that is set up. Is it
What they're
offices or
proposing.
desks?
Do we have a traffic study on a traffic study on this?
We did, originally they did a traffic study, yes.
But not on this on this project here?
Yeah,
Okay, not the original one, not the first part.
No,
No.
they did provide a traffic study on the first, in the DEIS, and they
Yeah.
updated the trip generation for the FEIS based on the new building program.
And is it consistent with what they're writing here at 1-10?
Yeah, so the study, because the change in the number of trips was so low.
Yeah. No. This has us making findings that, given the very low volume of trips, I'm not sure how we can do that and what we have to justify that with. Just want to explain that.
So what we can ask for is for them to elaborate on this more fully and provide a table that shows the comparison of the trip generation between the DEIS and the FEIS, so that it's more clear what's being compared.
seems good.
Has the village engineer indicated when a report would be issued to us or not?
A report on what specifically?
Oh, I thought that they said that the village engineer, we don't have a village engineer's response to flooding yet, 3D5. Hold on. 3D5, all right, hold on. I wish they could just use numbers, Arabic numerals from beginning to end, but this is, comment. D9. I think is one of the places. It says flood storage documents have been revised in accordance with the consultant's memorandum and have been provided to the consulting engineer for review.
I'll follow up with the village engineer on that question. I know they looked at the FEIS,
And maybe you can have the.
but I'm not
village
sure
engineer-
if they answered that specific question. So
Maybe you can have the engineer look at the flooding.
Do we have the ability to request comments from other boards during this FEIS?
So that the comments from the other boards should have been received during the DEIS process, and not every board submitted comments during that process. At this point, it's really the lead agency's document to revise. Once you've accepted it as complete, there then is a 10-day waiting period before the finding statement can be adopted. And during that 10-day waiting period would be another opportunity for the other boards to send comments.
Right, but we don't, but actually, after the once we are ready to adopt the FEIS, you only have 10 days, right?
It's a minimum of 10 days.
Oh, that you can go longer than the 10 days?
It's 10 to 30.
Okay, so if we did get comments at that point, we could do something about them?
Right, you
'Cause
can
I know
address them in your
that
finding statement.
We have, in the FEIS, we have to respond to every comment that anyone sends, that anyone makes. So if we get any written, we haven't gotten any spoken comments, but if we get any written comments, we do have to incorporate them in the FEIS. So if during that 10-day period, what do we do? Let's assume whether it's a planning board or a public submits a comment. What happens to that comment, and what does the board do with that comment?
So typically, you would try to address that comment in your statement of findings. It depends on the nature of the comment. If it's bringing up a new issue, then it's something that you can try to resolve within the statement of findings.
So we wouldn't be presumably we would have to meet, the board would have to meet to discuss what we wanted to do with that.
Yes, so once you've accepted the FEIS as complete, we would have a draft finding statement prepared. Charlie and I were talking earlier, it would probably be me preparing it, then Charlie revising it. And then the board would discuss it at a meeting, and we would make further revisions based on the board's comments before it would be adopted.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could just point out, though, you said that it's our document, which it is, but 617.9 of the regs B says under environmental impact statement, the lead agency and other involved agencies must cooperate with project sponsors who are preparing EISs by making available to them information contained in their files relevant to the EIS. So I think there is a level of cooperation.
Yes, there is. And this board has been sharing the document with the other agencies. The document is available on the village's website, as is the draft.
Right.
So it has been a coordinated review thus far.
Yeah, have we shared this with the flood mitigation committee?
I don't know if it was sent specifically to that committee. It is available on the village's website, and we can forward it to them specifically.
Because we're really stuck on understanding the requirements of the village and how the original building was built in terms of flood mitigation, and then the adequacy of what they're planning now. And it seems that it's super relevant to get comments from the flood mitigation committee, because that's what they're focused on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else, Meg? Just moving along.
No, thanks very much. No, thanks.
Okay, Brian, you want to go through your comments?
Sure. One of the major variances that they're asking for, which ties into the FEIS, is, the pure square footage of this structure. And, in order to build it, there are environmental concerns that I have, which I definitely have questions on. Their final scoping outline from 2019, acknowledges that there's, a very high water table. It's only within 3 feet of grade, and that there's contaminated soil in there, at least some amount of contamination. We only have a certain amount of testing, but contaminated soil is also something which they discuss. And in that document, they talk about having to move 1,000 tons. that's 2 million pounds of dirt. That gives me, when you start going into the FEIS, the first thing that, I think of there is, what are not just the long-term effects, but, I'm interested in the short-term effects on the environment, any kind of substantial adverse change, in not only, how the soil could affect the water, but how are they going to be handling it? Is it going to be taken off site directly? Is it going to be moved around in heaps? Because once you disturb it, if it's dry, it starts going in the air. And then, you could have contaminants in the air. So how are they going to be handling the soil that they're going to be disturbing during the process of construction? Now, I know that we don't have a construction plan yet, which makes sense because they don't know what kind of building they're going to be allowed to build. But there has to be some level of assurances to us that there are going to be fail-safes put in place to ensure that the handling precautions are not going to affect the air quality, the water quality, and also the structural integrity of anything and everything which is around there, which includes the road for Railroad Way. If they're going to be digging down and they're going to be right on a property line, how is that going to affect the integrity of the road for that whole industrial area behind them? That's a significant concern of mine. Now, I have seen, so that it doesn't come back to me that things have changed. In the DEIS, they've changed the numbers to 550 cubic yards. That comes out to 1.2 million pounds of dirt. Now I'm seeing on table 1-2 of the, and maybe that's just a comparison chart. I think that's just a comparison chart of the net excavation, that they've decreased the net excavation. Right now, what they're saying is, in my mind, substantial, poses a health and safety risk, both short-term and long-term, in the environment and in the structural integrity of the areas around it. And I would very much want to see that addressed. Let's see. We've done a lot of talking, or you have done a lot of talking about, the character of the area and the visuals. One thing that I haven't seen, which I'd be very interested in, which I know that they can do, I'd like to see a visual rendering of what this site is going to look like as proposed from the train tracks and from 95, both during the day and at night, because I think that you have a tremendous amount of people going past. And if you're going to talk about the character of our community, this could be visually a monolith, even as proposed, because if you look at it from the current renderings from Railroad Way, it's just one big, it creates a canyon, I think, as somebody who, had said from before. And I'd like to know how it looks from the train, because that does reflect on our village. Let me see. Substantial change in use, integrity of use. I do have concerns about the mass of the building, because I think it goes to the intensity of the use. You're increasing the FAR, almost double from what the base requirement is, and that really goes to the segmentation, which we've already discussed. I think in order to avoid the segmentation issue, we've got to just look at this from scratch in terms of what they're looking for variances. So I think the mass is definitely something that we're going to have to weigh against the benefits. I'd like to see maybe more of what the benefits would be to outweigh or give us some kind of justification why we should be doubling FAR for this building. Let's see, is there anything else? I think just along with the environmental, is there any way to do remediation of the soil? Pre-existing soil remediation of it as such. And I think lastly, which I think Dave really covered it, I'm very concerned about flooding. And I know that, the building may meet FEMA standards. But I definitely would like to see a grading plan for the site with elevations, because to my knowledge, the property slopes down and the elevation where the current existing Murphy Brothers contracting office is on the corner of Fenimore is lower than where the existing building is. So I would like to see, what the overall elevation of the property is and how they're going to grade it so as to substantially prevent damage on their property. But even more importantly, I really want to ensure that we're not diverting, just because of a change in grade, water right into the middle of Fenimore or right down into Railroad Way, where all of a sudden that becomes a canal. So I'd like to see an elevation plan. Maybe they have one, but I haven't seen it. An elevation plan for this site and everything around it, to determine, what the effects of water runoff would be and flooding would be. And I know that that's probably also going to be looked at by Harbor Coastal Zone or the Flood Committee. But again, had we asked them for advice, I think that's the first thing they would have said for us to get and take a look at. So I just think that we should get that directly. And I think that's about it. There's a lot to consider here. There's a lot to consider.
I think those are great comments, Brian. And as you said, I just want to clarify. I think that they said that they would comply with FEMA requirements, not that they have made sure that this is FEMA compliant. Is it possible for us to ask that they get an approved floodplain development permit before we approve this, so we know that it is compliant with our flood mitigation officer and the plans in the village? Does that have to come after this? It's an environmental requirement, and they might be asked to change what the project is. But it's great that they've made the commitment. They realize they need to do it, but I don't believe that they have had that review yet. So
that may go part and parcel with the actual building plans that they haven't developed yet, because they haven't gotten that far. So that's something that maybe Ashley or Charlie would be able to explain to us.
When I've done my research about the FEMA and about the floodplain development permits, it seems like something that you apply for. You're right, when you apply for like a building permit or something, but it doesn't have to wait on a site plan or something else. So I think that if you apply for the permit and it may not be complete yet, that you're getting some response from our flood mitigation officer. Right now, we're not getting any information from the people that actually have to uphold the requirements for FEMA.
I don't think until they submit a detailed plan that shows exactly how the building is designed and everything else, that they can actually get the determination. I think that so I think that they have to comply, and we can ask for all the information that we might think that would be necessary to make that. But if they haven't finally designed their building, which I don't know that they have. Now, interestingly, when they come for a variance, they're going to have the building designed. So, because we have to look at the building as a whole in order to determine. So,
I just think that
we may be at a
that
place in
later.
between.
Well,
We may be at a
Right,
place.
but,
So I just don't
but
wanna wait there.
again,
I'm sorry, let me just finish. I don't want to wait for that later. And I also want to know, did they get that permit for the existing building? Or did they just build that without getting a permit for it?
That's the fair question. That's a good point.
That's a reasonable question.
That's
And
it.
the question is, were they required to get one? And if so, did they do it? And if they weren't required, what were they required to do? Because rules have
And if
changed.
they were not required, then I would go with Brian's perspective that this is now one project. And so it needs to, the entire project and everything that's built on it must comply with the floodplain permit.
right, and also just to make myself clear, what I'm asking for is a current elevation map. So we can actually see.
And a future elevation map.
Exactly.
You need both.
Right.
You need both.
Right, the grading plan, which shows, so we can actually see what's there, where and how the water is going to be directed based upon the lay of the land, and then how that's going to be altered. And then we'll be able to see how that will affect somebody else. I just thinking about it now, and perhaps Robin, you had asked about it. Were they expecting to put any lighting on the back of the building to help Railroad Way from being, very dark at night?
They had some lighting. They showed some lighting because it came up previously. I don't remember exactly what the answer was or what they said they were doing.
I know that I know they're having obviously very nice, whatever in front, but I'm just as concerned in back. And that's also another reason why I asked about the visuals from the train station at night and during the day.
I think that's an actual good question if it's not too late for us to ask for that information. And I probably, if we can get that information, I think, Brian, that's a very good point that you raise about visuals from other directions rather than just the simple one that they give the location. We had asked for more than they originally provided, but we didn't ask for additional, but maybe we can't complete the review until we get that additional.
Can we get the site plan? And is there a topo that they have?
I don't remember if somebody's trying to figure out and look at the DEIS to see if they had something, but it would probably be in the.
There was a survey included in the DEIS.
Yeah, but was it a top? Or was it just a survey?
I think there was topography on it.
One of the things we might want, just to supplement that for a moment, is we may want to get I've asked for this before, the site plan approval on the property that's there.
Wait, they don't, you mean from the existing building?
Right. Yeah, I've asked that in the past because I've always said, did you comply with that? Because on my recollection was there were some variances in it, but okay.
We did give them
One
some
other thing,
variances.
since this is our FEIS, when we talked about like, does the county have to be, the state have to be notified? Is there any reason instead of going back and asking, we just don't contact the DEC and say, here's what we have, does this have to go to you? I mean, you've got Superfund site, you've got a lot of sites right there being remedied as well, but I don't know. It seems like we're just creating a lot of, if it's going to be our document, from what it's worth.
I did not have a chance to go through because since it's our document, there's some wording that I did want to.
Yeah.
It reads as it's their document, not as our document, just the way it's written. Some of it, you have to edit that. And I have to say, something that's been bothering me since the very first submission is the title page. Now, this is called Mamaroneck Self-Storage Building Added On, which I think is what they're doing. But I do think that it should really be spelled correctly, since I think they meant to have said, and now that it's our FEIS, it should be building addition, or we can change it, but not, or we could leave it building added on, however we want to do it.
Why
But
don't we
that
do-
is what it says. I
Where
mean,
do you
it's
see that? I'm
impossible.
sorry.
The cover page. Look at the title of it on the cover page.
Oh,
Of the DEIS of the,
Oh, I think it should just say of this, of Mamaroneck, the self-storage as opposed to, or the site, or by address. Because particularly in light of what Brian mentioned earlier, I agree with, we're doing the whole project here, not just the add-on.
so, so I think we need to this is our FIS, so how do we want to title it? And can we change that? Ashley, I ask you, you're probably the best one to answer that.
Yes, if there's something doesn't seem correct with the title, you can.
Well, no. It clearly clearly the title can be corrected if we want to say addition. We can do that. I think Dave is raising and I sort of raised, and Dave is following up with an additional point, which is to the extent that we're considering this really, some of the impact is really the impact of the whole project. Can we just consider Mamaroneck self-storage building, period?
Or
For the title or for the, I think you
For the
can look at.
title. Because that's what we're doing. I mean,
yeah, I agree.
and it may be that we have to consider it, call it self-storage building addition, because that is sort of what the current, if you will, the variances that they're applying for, and this is in relation to the variances they're applying for, and the variances really only relate to the enlargement, notwithstanding that the FEIS may have to consider more sort of a.
So why don't we just refer?
Yeah, I mean, I think the action that's triggering this is the addition. So I think keeping the title, the addition, makes sense, but certainly the DEIS needs to look at the site as a whole.
Okay, so we'll title it, then it needs to be corrected to be addition. I don't think added on.
Well,
While it may be correct, I think we
I'll
should,
just point out that the FES that I'm looking at says addition.
it got it correct? Didn't realize it did. I thought I saw that.
Yeah,
was
but
still-
if we're going to maintain that it's the segmentation, as I think it is, and I think the record's very clear on that, as is this, then I think we should title it properly. Otherwise, you have a variance. We're saying it's for the addition. So then, I mean, I think we've all pointed out.
No. I'm looking at the FEIS, and the title page says Mamaroneck self-storage building added on.
Oh, I see. I have self-storage building addition. I think it should say Mamaroneck self-storage building.
And the word after is missing, the I is in TION. It just says
Yes,
AD.
it's an additon. It's a ton. How many tons? How many tons in an addition, right? No, I understand, but I think it shouldn't be.
So it does
addition.
need to be fixed. But no, Charlie was saying his says addition, but it's not in what I have.
No,
Well, you could also, for that matter, you could title it modifications to Mamaroneck self-storage.
That sounds smaller. I would rather leave it
Yeah.
I would rather leave it titled building addition, and then within the project, we can describe it as, and maybe we have to redo the description of the project as a whole to explain what it is, in order to just sort of the description in the very beginning, what is happening, so that it's clear that that something is being added, and as a result, there are impacts that have to be considered by reviewing the whole thing. And
Right, well, that's what I was getting at. That's why I said, and I don't disagree with you. That's why I was saying modifications to the existing building, because I wouldn't want somebody to just pull out and look at the addition on its own, as its own thing. It should relate back to the original
Right.
building.
yeah, I don't think modifications does any better.
Fine.
Do
So
we
I
have
think
to have a section in here that deals with segmentation, Charlie? Why we're considering the whole thing, so someone understands it? I mean,
Yeah, that's what I was suggesting,
Yeah.
that we
I
needed
think-
to write an introduction
yeah, I think so.
that explained why we're doing the whole thing. I think we need
Right.
to, we need to write it, or I guess since they're prepared, I think this is something that we need to write
I agree.
rather than the applicant needing to write, because we want to set it the way we want. So Ashley, if this is something that you could draft up based on what we've said about how we want to consider it and why, to be sort of the introduction.
Yep.
That would be good.
And Ashley, if you take a look, they have comments throughout the document that they've drafted that talked about it's cohesively working, it's a prior approval, it's consistent, it's part of the same thing, and it's pretty clear. A couple of their dates are off, but mostly okay.
If nothing, okay, so everybody's given their comments, I think. So now the next step is we have these comments, we have the comments AKRF provided, all of which we are considering as our comments. And based on that, there are some of these things that require responses from the applicant and additional information. So I think we need to, we can't approve it. We can't even complete our review because we don't have all the information we need. So I guess the next step is for us to request the applicant to provide the information that we requested today.
Yes.
And then once
Yes,
we
so-
have that additional information, we can conduct another or complete our review, presumably, of the FEIS.
Yes, so the next step is for the applicant to go back, revise the FEIS, including the additional information that you've requested. I've advised the applicant that the revised document should be prepared as a red line so that you can see where the changes were made specifically. And then once the board is satisfied with those changes, you can move to accepting it as complete.
Okay, so I guess we just,
Before we move to accept it, we have not even seen the beginning.
No, I know. I
Well,
mean,
not-
like,
we're not
we have not even
accepting
seen the
anything
beginning.
yet.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just
We're
heard-
not accepting it. Oh,
Not today.
Ash was telling us the process.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She was just telling us the process that they have to come back. Once they come back, if we like it, then we can accept it. If we don't like it, don't accept it then. And one of the things that has to come back is the language that I've asked Ashley to draft.
Right. Now, Charlie, do each of the agencies do their own finding statement? We have to do the first one, right?
Yes, you have to do your first finding statement, then each agency will conduct their own finding statement prior to them issuing their approval.
Okay. Do they have to comport with ours, though? Ours also have to be followed, don't they?
They can deviate from your finding statement, but their findings have to be based on the environmental record.
Gotcha. So the finding statement is done what, within 10 days or something? Or I forgot, a few weeks after?
So after the FEIS is deemed complete and filed, it's circulated to all the involved agencies. Then there's a 10-day waiting period, like Ashley had mentioned, and then you were able to adopt your finding statement after 10 days. The other agencies may adopt their finding statements, I suppose, before you do. However, typically what happens is the lead agency adopts their finding statements, and then the other agencies kind of just say, we agree and we adopt the lead agency's finding statement, but that might not be the case here.
Might be, might not be. Are there any guidance on should we give thought to that now in terms of the finding statement?
Yeah, we can, because we don't have all the information we need.
I would say there would be plenty of time in between the adoption and the filing of the FEIS, and then Ash's office and my office preparing a draft finding statement.
But as Robin mentioned earlier, there's a lot of drafting that still has to take place, even once we get the information. I'm with you. Thank you.
Okay, so anybody has any final things to say on this before we move on to the next, to the closed applications? Okay, so we've completed our comments for today, and now it's up to the applicant to respond. Okay, next items are the closed applications. So the first one on the agenda is 805 Mamaroneck Avenue, case 9SP 2019. Is that am I looking at the, yeah, Duck Donuts. We have a draft.
I did not have time to review this resolution. It came in later and I haven't looked at it myself.
Let me just see whether I had put any comments. I have comments on several of them, but I don't remember if I have any on this.
So there was a bit of a there was a bit of a miscommunication between myself and Brittany, and that's on me. I had thought that the board wanted to discuss this matter at the work session, but the board had not yet deliberated on this, so there was
Oh, so then we didn't, so there should not be a draft resolution.
correct, there's no draft resolution yet.
Okay, so then we don't have a draft resolution. Let's just discuss.
Greta's not here. We could wait. I would hold this over until December. We don't need to do all of these applications today.
We don't need to do a lot. We can, correct. We never need to do all of them. If you want to wait for this one, we can wait. That's
Yeah,
fine.
because I have not used this application. I haven't thought about it.
Okay, what's been on the agenda? Okay. The next item is 157 Mamaroneck Avenue, Murph and Eddie's.
Right.
And I'm going to take the rest of the, no, go ahead. Okay, Murph and Eddie's. Comments, I have lots of comments on the, but wait, I believe, so we did get several resolutions that were distributed to us that had from past applicants who had hours. We have Nona Corolla that is open till 11. The latest it's open is 11. Then we have another restaurant open till 11. Then we have another one open till Red Plum open till 11. Haiku never later than 11:30. Frank Infinucci and was 1 a.m. Hash on Nash was 11 p.m. So lots of different times. So I think we can, if we have reasons to add, we can put whatever times we think reasonable here. And there is no prior, it is not like there is a pattern to how we have been adopting the hours, and they've gone all over the place is the main conclusion. We do not have a pattern, and whatever hours we think appropriate for here are the hours, or for any other application are the hours we should adopt for that applicant.
I'm cognizant of the fact that we just voted on a resolution for a restaurant that has music. It's on the Mamaroneck Avenue. It was just a month ago, asking for 2 a.m. on Saturday, and we changed it to 1, and we had certain conditions about when to close and when the customers had to be out. And I think for consistency's sake, I don't see, unless we can find a substantial difference between the operation of this new application and the other one, that we should be consistent in our finding. They both had asked for 2 a.m. We came up with a certain standard for certain hours and standards around that hour, and we should be applying the same one here.
Okay, there is a significant difference between this application and the next one. This one is on the application on the corner of the building that is the Regatta, which has a very, very large number of residents. In terms of distance from residential use, this is significantly closer to a residential building than the prior application. Therefore, and since we were very clear that Nona Corolla, which is right across the street, we were very clear that hours had to be limited for Nona Corolla. I think it is appropriate, and we can limit the hours for this restaurant while being consistent, or really we're not being inconsistent because there is a rational reason. So I do not see any problem with, if we are concerned with limiting the hours as we see fit. And to me, the consistency with the last application is not the basis for granting the hours.
To me, it does. We did talk about residents. There's plenty of residents that live on top of the building down where the other application was and across the street. I don't think it's just the number. All of those people count just as much as all the people in the Regatta. We talked about the fact that they are next to residences just as this one. I don't think that those residents are any less requiring of quiet hours than this one. So to say, oh no, but there are a lot of people here and somehow we're going to have a different standard. So
well,
actually, I think the applicant would be satisfied with even less. So if board members really feel strongly, but I feel very strongly that for the weekend hour, that it should be consistent with what we just approved for another applicant.
What did they have? What did they have in the past on the last special permit? Barley's.
I think it was 1 o'clock, but that's just my memory.
Yeah.
I don't
Charlie,
have the
what
papers.
date did you send those resolutions? Do you know what days we got them?
I can pull it up. Hang on.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so here, I have several comments on the resolution before we even get, and it's just substantive. I mean, it's just language before we even get to the hours. And I'm not saying I know what the hours are. And it's interesting that I was talking about numbers, not who the residents are. I don't think there's any difference. It's not a question of who the residents are. It's a question of how many numbers are next to the residences. And there are in numbers more residents in this area than there are further towards the other end of Mamaroneck Avenue. I base my resolution on what I think is appropriate, not on what we did somewhere else. So let's discuss this specific one. So I'll give you my comments on the resolution, then we should discuss the hours, which is a separate
just
issue.
Very quickly, Dave, it was November 12th.
November 12th?
Yep, there are two separate emails because I forgot to actually attach this resolution.
Okay, so just reading the resolution, going through it in the first paragraph, whereas Murphy is applied to this board for a special permit to operate, you don't have a new existing restaurant. It's either a new restaurant or it's an existing restaurant. So it's a new restaurant on lowercase property located at 157 Mamaroneck Avenue. So it should be, the word existing should be crossed off and it should be a lowercase p. Then
Okay.
2 paragraphs down, this next paragraph should really continue into the next one. I'm going to read it as it should be. Whereas the premises is located in the village's C2 zoning district, which permits restaurants by special use permit pursuant to zoning code section 34245. And in the same paragraph, the premises was previously occupied by a different restaurant, Bar Lee's. Sort of incorporates some of the words from the third paragraph into that one and shortens it all up.
Okay.
And then moving down to B, to the further resolve, the following conditions. We have B and C. B says the special use permit shall expire, and C says the special use permit shall terminate. Charlie, you put those words in. Did you mean to distinguish between expire and terminate? Otherwise, we should use one word.
I think the logic behind it, because I saw this on prior resolutions, was that it expires upon any transfer.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't expire. It terminates.
No,
It
I mean,
should be terminate.
That's fine. Terminate.
It should be terminated. And we've talked about this before. And my recollection from case law in New York is that change of ownership is not relevant to, I've mentioned this before, change of ownership is not a basis, mere change of ownership where there's no change in the operations or use is not a basis for a new special permit. So Charlie, is that correct or is that not correct?
I believe that is correct. So we should use terminate.
Correct. So we should take out that the special use permit renewal grant, and it's a renewal, or it shouldn't be renewal, that the special use permit renewed here or something herein shall terminate upon any change in the use or operations of the premises.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the next one doesn't need, then you just merge because B and C then more or less read the same use, operational configuration of the premises. I think you should take out C and make B say that the special use permit renewal granted herein shall terminate upon any change in use, operation, or configuration of the premises, period. And we don't need C.
Sounds good.
Okay, now, anybody else have any comments? Otherwise, let's discuss the hours.
I
Saturday,
have comments.
go ahead.
I have comments.
Okay,
If
go.
we go back to the fourth paragraph on the first page, whereas,
Mhm.
I don't know that they said they weren't going to cook any food, that they will not cook food, that they're only going to cook small plates, but I don't know what the definition of cook, but I think they're going to heat them up. So I would change that paragraph to the application does not propose any changes to the existing structure and will prepare a limited menu of food items for service by waitstaff at tables provided. So because we did not get details about, are you heating them up, warming them up?
Yeah,
I would just
they did.
prepare a limited menu.
They specifically said they weren't going to cook anything. That was asked and answered. They weren't going to cook anything. All they were going to do was heat things. They specifically said
I'm
that.
sorry, that's not my recollection. I remember they said they don't have a full kitchen and they were going to have different items. And by this way, you're actually eliminating, I don't know what would be considered cooking if you had, tacos and you melt cheese on it, is that cooking? And now they can't do it because they can't do that. The idea was that it's not a full dinner, it's limited food items or bar menu. But I don't think that we should say that they cannot cook whatsoever.
I don't have a problem with changing. They did say it, but I don't have a problem with saying something something to the effect. Could you read again what you're proposing, Meg?
The application does not propose any changes to the existing structure and will prepare a limited menu of food items for service by wait staff at tables provided within the premises.
Okay, I got it. That works.
And then if we are now going to not say that change in ownership, because we had that in some other special permits. But
Yes, we've taken
we
it
are
out.
not asking, we are not taking it out. I would like to make it a little bit fuller and that it's any change in use. Can we say including but not limited to intensity and type of services? Because a change in use could sound like it's going from a restaurant to becoming a fitness center. It's not just whether it's changing. If the restaurant itself has a greater intensity, has more customers, is going to offer different services, I believe that it should come back for a special permit. So if we could just flesh out change in use, including but not limited to intensity and services offered.
Well, we've already said change in use, operations, or configuration. Operations would include all of what you're concerned about, so I don't think we need to say anything more than that.
I don't know that it's so specific. I would appreciate, if you think it's the same, I would appreciate a few more words to say.
That's fine.
Because I've seen a lot of restaurants change hands and not come back for special permits, and it is a completely different intensity of use, and it is a completely different, it's a bar scene, it's late hours, it's a lot more drinking. So I think it's the services, it's also the services provided.
Fine, so let's say it shall terminate upon change in the use, operation, services, or intensity of use or configuration of the premises.
Whatever.
That's fine. Anything else, Meg?
No. I can
Anybody
offer
else have
what I
any-
thought hours would be, but go ahead.
We'll talk about hours separately. Anybody else have any other comments on the language before we get to the hours? Okay, hours. Meg, you want to, what are the hours you would like?
What
Not
I
the hours.
would suggest, looking at the list here, Tuesday through Wednesday, 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. Thursday, 4 p.m. to 12 a.m., doors and windows to be closed by 11 p.m. Friday, 4 p.m. to 1 a.m., doors and windows to close by 11 p.m. Service to cease by 12:30 p.m. And for Saturday, the same thing, doors and windows to close by 11, I'm sorry, Saturday would be 4 p.m. to 1 a.m., not the 2. Doors and windows to close by 11 p.m., service to cease by 12:30 p.m., and customers must be out of the premises by 1 a.m. And then Sunday, 4 p.m. to 10 p.m.
I don't mind I actually have a problem with the 1 a.m. It's much later. I would make this, but since it's a 3-year special permit, since this is only granting it for a short term, we can do that, but I would not have Thursday be later than 10 p.m. That's what we've done for almost every place else on Mamaroneck Avenue. We've left the weekdays, which is Tuesday through Thursday, only till 10 p.m. And I would not, if we want to be consistent, this needs to be, then that is what it should be consistent.
Yes, I agree. That sounds reasonable.
But I don't think 11:30 I think 11:30 is too late. I'm sorry, 12:30 is too late for service. The service would have to cease by midnight.
So
if you want to get customers out by 1, if everybody has to be out of the premises by 1, services have to be stopped by midnight.
I'm copying the language, the exact conditions that we just placed last month for the other restaurant that closed at 1. And we decided that service had to cease at 12:30, and it was up to the operator to make sure the customers left by 1.
Well,
So for
I'm
them
changing
now-
that.
To give the, I'm
This-
sorry, to give the same closing hour, to say that you have to cease service a half an hour earlier than the one we just approved last month, does not seem consistent.
This is not like a formal sit-down restaurant, so that it's not a matter of people have to start their meal by a certain time. Half an hour is, I would think 12:30, half an hour is fine. They don't have a full service wait,
They don't have full service.
right. That's different because that takes people, they sit down then at midnight, you're not gonna throw them out.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Brian, are you commenting on this one? I don't remember. which
Yeah,
one.
no, this one, this one I went through
Oh,
from.
yeah, it was the last hearing. You're right. I'm sorry. I forgot it was the last.
From scratch. I hear what Meg is saying about certain aspects of consistency. I can tell you just, from my own thoughts, I literally went around on the internet when we didn't have the old resolutions and looked at everybody's opening and closing hours. And saw that across the street, that they closed at Nona's, and I saw Frankie and Fanucci's was open till 1. I didn't see anybody open past 1. So my thoughts were to not extend the hours to 2 a.m. on Saturday under any circumstances. We heard from I think the community affairs officer or somebody in a similar capacity from the apartment building, from the big
The
building.
regatta?
Yeah, from the
resident of
regatta. Yeah, and she didn't seem to voice any concerns with the last establishment. And as a matter of fact, in terms of windows and doors, I believe the owner says that there's really no windows to be open and that the door will remain closed. My problem with the applicant was I couldn't understand why he kept saying why everything was acoustic, but yet they're going to have an open mic.
I think it's
So
New kind of
Is
acoustic.
Mike the name of the singer or is Mike what he's called?
New kind of acoustic. A new kind of acoustic.
Yeah, so
I get
I do think, I do think that we do have to think the fact that, if they're going to have amplification, how in fact that could affect things, because
the next paragraph. The next paragraph, it goes to all amplified sound and music. We could say shall cease at 10 p.m. We could make it, if it's amplified, we could make it an earlier hour than it has to cease.
right.
And also all windows, and all windows and doors must be shut during times of amplified sound and music. Right now it doesn't have doors.
Right. So I'll, so I think he actually said something about them. He anticipated the music ceasing around 11, but yet he wanted to keep the facility open later because of its nature as a wine lounge or something like that. So really, just in my opinion, I don't have a problem with their hours as they stand, with the exception of I would not give the 2 a.m. on Saturday. I would limit that to 1 a.m. But I also do think that the music should cease earlier. I don't know what other people's opinions on that on time. I know that Robin, you had said you thought that perhaps the whole establishment ought to close earlier. I don't know whether or not the music would, ceasing at a different time would change that opinion. I'd like to know what other people think.
We've done that before. We always make the music stop early. We often
So do you want
do.
to
So
say
that's
all
perfectly
except for
reasonable
F?
too. So we can easily make the hours for the music stop earlier.
So perhaps paragraph F, we say all acoustic and amplified sound music. Well, we can't say all acoustic sound, but all acoustic music and any amplified sound or music shall cease at 10 p.m. and all windows must be shut. Would that be, do you think 10 p.m. is a good time? I think
10
less
p.m.
than
is-
that.
I think we've done 10 p.m. everywhere else. So
And I think that's what he said. The applicant said it would be stopping around
I
10.
think we've
So
done
don't
that everywhere else, so I think 10 PM would be fine.
Well, I certainly wouldn't have an objection to that. And again, if the sound stops emanating from there, I don't have a problem with them operating till 1 a.m. They don't have any big ticket items coming into that place. It's not like they're selling big full service meals. And in terms of what they do provide, it may be kind of even an after hours place. Maybe somebody is going to go there to enjoy after a dinner. They're certainly not going there for dinner. So I would have it. I would be fine with 1 a.m. on Saturday. It's the music that would be more of a concern for me, and I think that that's addressed if it stops at 10.
All
You would
right,
stop all music at 10 o'clock inside? Is that the concern?
Yeah,
That's-
well, yeah, I mean, that's what the rest of the board members said is
Yeah.
consistent with the other music on the avenue.
So what did it used to be there where it's been? Because
I can't remember what Barley's
I've been
had.
there. I've been there at night, not that frequent. I've been there maybe 4 or 5 times.
Well, I don't think that we've said music has to be, because restaurants often have kind of very quiet, you have the background music, whatever like the, you
Yeah,
have
they
the
have music. They
like the
have some
radio
live
playing
music
in the
up front.
background. Obviously no one uses radios anymore, but the equivalent of the radio playing in the background, and we've never had a problem with that. So I think it's any amplified sound has to end at 10. Other music that isn't amplified does not have to end at 10, because if it's not amplified, if you have a
As
speaker
long
that's
as
not
doors and windows are closed. As long
Yeah.
as doors and windows are closed.
right.
I think amplification might be any electronic sound.
We've never meant that. We've
Right.
always distinguished between, but you're right, if you have a radio going on, the radio has a speaker,
Maybe
is that
you should-
amplification?
maybe-
Technically, it might be.
Maybe you should just differentiate between live.
No, it's not
Yeah.
only live, because lots of places don't have live. I mean, the problems next door that
Maybe a
had happened,
DJ.
whether it's records, it
Karaoke
depends
or
on how loud your,
DJ. Yeah.
depends on how loud your speaker is.
Yeah.
So it isn't the live, the amplification. I mean, it isn't the music versus anything else. I think we can say except for background music.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
And, we don't have to be, I mean, that's the idea. We're letting them have background music, but if the intent is to have a sound that people are listening to, that's always louder. So I
What did
think
they
that
want, you know?
What?
What did they ask for? Did they ask at all for
We
anything?
did, they talked about music, but they wanted the sound. You know what I think? Okay, so I mean, if the rest of the board is willing to go to 1 a.m., I would not be, but
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. Provided that, so why don't we say that weekdays, Monday to Thursday is till 10 p.m., Saturday and Sunday is till 1 a.m., and they have to, the last end of the services at 12:30. Sunday is, I don't remember, what do they say, Sunday?
4, I think 4.
No, end, I'm just talking about
that
the
was-
end.
10 p.m.
10 p.m. So Sunday, so it's Sunday through Thursday, 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, 1 a.m. and the last service has to stop at 12:30. And that they have to get all
That's
customers out
later.
by
They didn't
1. They have
ask
to
for
get
what
all
they-
customers out by 1, and that any amplified sound has to stop at 10, and background music can continue until at 12,
With
Closing.
all doors and windows closed at 10 p.m.
and with all doors and windows closed, right? Everyone okay with that?
My only question is if it 10's a little early. for
We had
lunch.
most restaurants closing they had 10 every night except Thursday.
Really? Yeah. No, because it's a place that basically brings in a crowd, not a dinner crowd, but a later crowd for drinks, and usually it's a nice crowd there. But whatever you
Well,
think.
they've
The
asked
only
for.
the only night that they asked for 10, other than the 2 1 a.m.s, was Thursday.
Right.
That they asked for later. They asked for midnight on Thursday.
And
That
we've
would
been
be the
very
only one.
clear that school nights were or had
Yeah,
to be
you're right.
earlier. That was
No,
the issue.
no,
and
I
don't
understand
wanna-
it.
I don't see why, I don't know that we want to change it. And as has happened before, if they operate till 10 and they find it a problem, they can come back and amend the special permit resolution. I mean, I think that's what they would do. I think that we'd be open to that. If they're operating for a year and find that it's not a problem and nobody has any objection because they're not making too much noise and it works, then I don't see that we'd have a problem with extending it.
Gotcha.
So I think that's,
Okay, so we make a motion?
somebody make a motion?
I'll
I'll
make a
make a
motion
motion.
to, okay.
No, go ahead and I'll second.
Dave, I'm sorry. Dave, were you here for this review? Did you watch the
I
review?
I listened to, that was when I was traveling. It was, yes, I did. I listened to part of it.
Oh, you were, okay. It's such a
I
nice
was
thing
in
to
and
do
out.
while you're traveling to watch the
Oh, it
meeting.
was a lot of fun. I tried to join the meeting without success.
So if the motion.
Got too,
is to
my
adopt
dog
this
and I was
resolution-
just having a great time with it.
If the motion is to adopt this resolution with the changes that we just enumerated, then I would vote yes.
Yeah, I do notice just one thing on Charlie, on the bottom of that resolution. You've got all of these Meg, Robin, Greta, yes, David, no, Brian abstain. I think all that is wrong. You're gonna have to fix it.
Yep, I've noticed that. I'll fix it. Those are
Yeah.
carryovers.
Okay. I'm sorry. So you made the motion. I just wanted to make sure I remember to tell him that. And Brian, you seconded it?
I second it.
Okay. David,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Meg.
Yes.
I vote yes as well. That is adopted. Moving on to the next one, which is 1043 West Boston Post Road, case number 48/2021 for Chopped. Okay, comments on the resolution.
I have a large comment, I guess. Charlie, if this resolution refers to this application, that the original application was December 10th and this is an amended application, we actually voted on the December 10, 2020 and signed a resolution. I thought that was all closed out, and this is a new application, not an amended one of the December 2021.
Yes, that's accurate. I'll take that out.
Okay, great. So, and then because it refers to the SU, it says, is that a special, what is SUP?
Special use permit.
A special use permit, okay. Sorry. I don't know that you can define the term, you have to read the whole thing to understand. Okay, okay. Is it okay if I go on, Robin?
Oh,
Or
yeah,
did you
sorry,
want to-
sure, go ahead. Go ahead, Meg, you can give your comments first, that's fine.
So I would actually, if you're going to change it to, this is an application filed on a certain date for a special use permit, and it was to operate a restaurant with car service, I would think you could put in the whole paragraph and the following variances. Isn't that how we normally write it? Like they ask for the special permit and the variances, can you put it in the same whereas clause?
The only
have
reason
to
I
make-
didn't was because they applied for the special use permit in February, and then they applied again in April for the area variances. So it was two separate applications, but I can, put it all
Okay,
in
no,
paragraph.
whatever you think is clear.
I
Okay,
think that's clearer
It
that
just
way,
looks a
given
little
that he
hard to
applied
follow.
separately. They did submit separately, it wasn't one application. So I think it's
got
probably
it. Okay,
clearer to
thank
do
you very
this way.
much. Thank you. Okay. And then as we go, so we have whereas pursuant to zoning code, any of the definition of restaurant,
Mhm.
and whereas, so at the bottom of page 1, you repeat whereas, something about food establishments. I don't know why that's in there. I don't know why the 3 lines at the bottom of page 1 are there. I don't know that it's necessary. It's whereas definition of restaurant and whereas pursuant to definition of restaurant carryout. Those are the 2 things that should be listed. And then I think we cross out, again, you defined restaurant a second time or something. If we take that out, it's a second reference to the definition of restaurant.
To
Mhm.
come out.
So I think it should just be whereas pursuant to the code, restaurant definition, whereas pursuant to the code, restaurant, carryout definition.
Yep.
and then skip down to whereas the applicant estimates. 'Cause I think it's a repeat in there.
Yep. I
And
agree.
then I would change the paragraph, whereas the applicant estimates.
Mhm.
I don't know, it has stuff about ordering before or after, and that's not germane to our decision. So I would change this paragraph to whereas the applicant estimates operation at the premises to include 2/3 of the anticipated customers ordering food for consumption off the premises, and 1/3 of the anticipated customers ordering food to be consumed on the premises at a table served by wait staff, because those are the two factors that relate to the descriptions in the code of these definitions. I don't think whether they do it prior to, and that it's supposed to, I don't think you have to say it's to pick up or eating at a different location. You simply say to consume off the premises.
That makes sense.
Okay. And let's see, I'll go fast. So then if we go to page 3, whereas the board consider the application on these certain dates, I don't think we considered this application on March 4th. Am I wrong? I thought that might have been one of the old hearings for the application.
Well, this was submitted
I thought
February 11th, so we did consider it on that more. This one, I was
Certain, I thought I looked it up. If we could just check and make sure that was.
Yep. I'll
Sometimes
check.
they're submitted and they don't get on our agenda. But if you could just check the March 4th date, whatever. And then again, check the date on where the board deliberated. I thought we deliberated October, November 4, and November 16th, but not on April 1.
Right, we didn't deliberate. I mean, we talk about it, but that's not usually what we consider the deliberations, correct? That's yes.
Okay. Okay, and then the last paragraph on page 3, letter A, the premises includes, it should be an existing structure, not and existing structure. I think it's just a typo. And I had requested, I don't know how the board feels, on page 5, under be it resolved, is subject to the following conditions. I would say the first one's fine. Number 2 should just be the applicant shall not operate car service. You don't need as a carryout restaurant. I wanted to add the applicant shall not utilize the drive-through window formerly used by the bank for any customer transactions.
That's fine. I'm okay with that.
Okay. And
That's
that was all.
consistent with what we
I mean,
did.
we're all sort of assuming it was in the site plan, but we didn't decide that factor, so we should just say that.
I think
And
that's
those are all the comments I have on that one.
okay. I have some, okay, so going back to page 1, mine are more language again on some substance. So the fact that because none of this makes sense unless we understand from the beginning. So I think the paragraph that says premises currently improved with an existing structure, that is an existing, that should be early on. Whereas the premises is currently improved, we're talking about what the premises is. So the statement about the fact that the current premises is currently improved needs to be much.
Ooh, I have more to say too.
Much earlier. So I think on page 1, the above captioned premises is located in the C1 district. And then the next paragraph should be, whereas the premises is currently improved with an existing structure and related off-street parking and drive-through window for an existing bank. That should go like the 3rd paragraph of the whole resolution. Then in the paragraph that begins, the applicant estimates, some language changes, the applicant estimates that operations at the premises will include, the rest is what Meg read is fine.
Yeah.
And then whereas the premises is currently improved comes out in the next page because we don't need it there. And then correcting the dates of deliberations because there was no deliberation on this application on April 1st. April 1st may have been when we deliberated on the prior application. Okay, so she mentioned about the existing structure. Then you get to area variance. Then it says, while the request.
I'm sorry, Robin, before we get to area variance, I'm so sorry. But before we get to area variance, on page 4, where it says the applicant does not change the existing.
I'm on page 4.
structure.
I'm on page 4.
Yeah, but it's above the variances. I thought it's the very top on B. Did I cut you off? I'm just trying to get to there before we get to the area variance.
You were reading, you just said it where the variances. I'm sorry, where are you? That's page 4 has the variances.
Yeah, the very top, before the variances, at the very top of the page on page 4, where it says letter B, the applicant does not change the existing structure.
It's part of the area variances, right? We're in the area variances, yeah.
Okay, I'm just sort of, I realize on the site plan, they are changing the existing structure because they showed that they're going to demolish the overhang that's there next to the drive-through window. They said they're going to remove the posts that are holding up the roof there. So the main footprint of the building is not changing, but it isn't that there are no changes to the structure.
So then we need to say, then we need to say there, whereas the building is not being, where the application does not change the building, because the building is not being changed. You're right.
Okay,
They were knocking down.
The building.
But it's not just the footprint. It's not the footprint. It is the entire building. They're not doing anything to the building except knocking down the
I
extension.
thought they were adding a small piece in the back.
Why don't we
I
just,
think it's the fact that it's the footprint that's not changing. We're
But it's
not
not
giving
just-
it, and then.
why don't we
But
just,
let's.
I just have a suggestion. Why don't we say, so it incorporates everything? The application does not propose significant changes to the existing structure.
It's not, no, because the problem is that some of what we're relying on within terms of parking and other things, if they were rebuilding the structure, then they could redesign the parking. Because they're not rebuilding the structure, that's relevant to why we're giving the variances. So
Okay,
I think we do need to make it clear that if we want that based on what Meg is reminding us, is that the application, and it's not just the footprint, it's more than the footprint, because in fact, if they are expanding it, then they're expanding the footprint, so that would be wrong. So I think that is not, we have to say something that recognizes that basically the building is staying the same, although the overhang, there's an overhanging portion that will be demolished where the bank drive-through was. And
I also think we need to check. I thought they're doing a little add-on in the back that would not change the footprint, but I thought they were covering something, a walkway. I thought I saw a slight modification in the back that didn't have any impact on any parking spaces. But I wouldn't want to limit them to say we're giving the variances and they can't absolutely do anything to their building when they go for a site plan. I think what's relevant is they're not changing the footprint so that, that affects the parking lot.
how about, I mean, football, maybe, how about the relation, yeah, footprint is fine. I'm okay with that. It isn't exactly correct, but it's not, but I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Okay, so going down, where I was in C of 1, it says the premises is within a commercial zoned neighborhood. That English is atrocious. It should be within a commercially zoned neighborhood. It should all be commercially zoned. It's not commercial zoned. Or within a neighborhood zoned for commercial uses, but it isn't commercial zoned. Then in number 3, it says, while the requested area variances are numerically substantial. I don't know what that means, and I don't think they are numerically substantial. In what way numerically substantial? I don't know what that what that means, and I don't necessarily agree. So unless
I believe it's referring to what Greta was saying was the percentages of the variances, so she found them to be substantial.
Right, but that's not. But not all of them. are, and I don't necessarily have always agreed with Greta as to what she considers substantial, but that doesn't mean they're numerically substantial. It would have to be, while some of the requested area variances may be greater than, and I would put the percentage down because I don't agree that some of them, I don't remember now, but in some other cases, she said it's 15%, and I don't agree that just because something is bigger than 15% makes it substantial. So I don't remember in this case, since I don't have the application open in front of me.
Okay, but perhaps, Dave, you're going to be voting on it and I'm going to be voting on it. Do we feel it's substantial one way or the other? Instead of, I understand, Robin, you don't feel it's substantial, but Dave, do you think it's substantial?
You know, that's an interesting thing. When we vote on it, we can deal with it, but nobody's commented elsewise on this too.
No.
So I'm looking to see if I have any of the applications. Oh, I don't have that application here in hard copy to look
Yeah,
at.
why is that funny?
If you go to the where I list the area variances, they talk about where proposed a 4-foot setback where 5 feet is required.
That's large.
It's only, and
Where do
then
you say that? What page? Where is that?
in the first page of the resolution where I list the variances that are required.
Right,
So-
and you know what I realized?
Yeah,
So
a
the-
7.4 foot setback where 50 feet is required is
So that means it's a pre-existing non-conforming yard.
right.
And so I think that that should be a part of, so I was going to suggest that the reason, I think that it is substantial.
That is
There-
substantial. I
you're
can't
going from
remember.
50 feet to 7. So I would say, but it's, how you say that it's mitigated by the fact that it's only one parking space to be located in a pre-existing non-conforming minimum front yard.
Well, I don't think
Something-
5 feet to 4 feet is substantial. So I do think that 50 feet to 7 feet is substantial. So
I thought if we make any, I'm sorry, I thought if we make any changes, is it only if we're building into it, we're creating a parking space into a non-conforming use.
Right.
And so then we have to consider what that minimum yard was supposed to be. If we're comparing it to 50 feet, then it is quite substantial.
yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing that 7.4 to 50 is substantial. 4 to 5 is not substantial in my view.
So where are you referring to 4 to 5? I'm sorry.
They need a side yard setback and a front yard setback variance. The front yard setback variance is substantial. I do not
Okay.
believe the side yard setback is substantial. All I'm saying is since I don't think are numerically substantial, because actually that doesn't mean numerically substantial sounds more like there are a lot of variances and there aren't. So if we want to say, I would want to say here, while the area variance for a front yard is substantial, is just substantial, is a substantial variance. It's not numerically substantial, it is a substantial variance. Under a totality of the circumstances and given that, we can say something, I just think it's okay under the totality of the circumstances, they are not substantial. I don't know that it's because we say we're proposing the use of an existing structure and related built areas. I don't think we need to go with more than that, but I want to say that, whereas because I'm only concerned about the one, which I think is substantial. I don't think the other one is. And again, numerically substantial doesn't mean that that doesn't mean the same thing. So I think we should say, whereas the front yard setback is substantial, very substantial, if you can't really say very substantial, is very large. Under a totality of the circumstances, the area variance are not substantial for the following reasons. And these are fine, but again, the premises is within a commercial zone neighborhood, a commercially zoned neighborhood.
I'm sorry, why do we have to say, and I'm sorry, one area variance is substantial, one variance is not, and then we're going to say the area variances are not substantial for the following reasons? I don't get that.
Oh, then we'll just say
It is substantial.
one area variance is because we're making a finding that we are not considering it overall as, while it is, what we're saying is, while it is a huge, while going from 50 feet to 7.4 feet is a huge difference. That's what we're saying. While the difference between the proposed front yard setback and the required front yard setback is large, that's really what we should be saying. While the difference between the proposed front yard setback and the required front yard setback is large, under the totality of circumstances, the area variances are not substantial. That's what we really.
We don't have, but they don't have to pass every single balancing test. We don't have, we could say one of the variances is substantial and one is not, and we could still grant this. We don't have to.
I'm fine with, you want to do it that way, that's okay too. I don't have problems doing it that way either. While while the variance for the front yard is very large, but
But usually we use the term substantial. With the requested area variances, one is substantial, one the board considers not to be substantial. And do we have to always have reasons? We could say because it's the percentage of the front yard and the other one is a smaller percentage, but I don't know why we're having to try to find a reason why they've passed every single test.
that's fine. So then we just have to say, while the front yard variance is substantial, period. That's number 3. We can just say the front yard. So 1, the area variance will not result. 2, the benefit sought cannot be achieved. 3, the front yard setback is substantial. You want to just say that? That's all we have to say. The front yard variance is substantial. Period. But we have to say, however, it is not. However, under the totality of the circumstances, we are not considering it as being a reason to turn this down. That's what we're saying there. So we would say that.
So if we're saying that one of the tests they do not pass, what is the appropriate language to say that we don't think that it's on balance a reason to deny the variance?
That's what he was trying to
So, related to this, I would advise that if the board does want to distinguish the 2 variances, one being substantial, one not being substantial, then you should do that. I would advise, however, if you are going to approve the variances and you do think that under a totality of the circumstances, the area variances capitalized as combined together are not substantial, because that's going to give you just further support in the resolution.
And I would say, I see, that's why I want to say, while the front yard variance is large, under totality of circumstances, that the area variances capitalized are not substantial because it is a pre-existing use, et cetera, et cetera. That's how I would say it. That's what I would propose we say.
I don't know why it's substantial. We usually use the term it is substantial. But it is.
But I'm not saying that.
But it is within a pre-existing non-conforming front yard that has been that way for many years.
So I
So
think
the impact on the pre-existing non-conforming front yard is not great.
Charlie is suggesting that we need to make it clear that while it's large, it isn't so significant that it's going to outweigh anything else. Therefore, we say.
I understand. I just don't want to say that I don't want to tie our hands and say that this is not a substantial variance. So I want to just say it's large and mixed in, it's not substantial. I find that one to be substantial, but we are approving that one, even though, actually, I think why we're lumping it together. Why are we approving that one even though it is substantial? Why? To me, it's in the pre-existing front yard. It's not really going to change the fact that the front yard is really small already. It's in a commercial zone and it's existed that way for many years. So to put the parking lot, one parking space in there is not a dramatic change. That's how I'm voting for it. I'm not voting for it because I think, well, when I add them up, I'm sort of ignoring the fact that that's so substantial. So
I think, and that's the point of making the statement, while it is large, given that there's a pre-existing use and a pre-existing condition, the one parking space, and given all of these other factors, we are not considering it so substantial as to be significant. Period. That's what we're saying. That's what we're saying. So Charlie, that's kind of work that.
Yep.
And the other one, I don't find it to be substantial.
We're only saying.
Could we go back to number 2? The benefit can't be sought. I just thought the reason why the benefit can't be achieved by some other method is because there's no other room on the lot for a parking space. It's not because the building's not expanding or something. It's the fact that there's not enough room for parking spaces.
But it is because the building's not expanding, because the building is existing. If the building wasn't there, they could have moved. If the building didn't exist, they could make a smaller building. If the building didn't exist, they could possibly relocate it on the site. The point is the building is there, and therefore, given that the building is there and they're not changing it, there's no other place to put it. That's the problem. It's because the building is there. If the building wasn't there, they could do an awful lot of things.
Right, but you didn't refer to the fact that there's no other places to put a parking space. You're sort of assuming everybody would know that, but we didn't write it in there. That we're not changing the footprint, the existing structural footprint, and there is no other space on the lot to create more parking space.
Well, you can add that to what it says then. I'm okay, we can add that.
Yep, got it.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Oh, yes, Brian Gladstein's last name should be spelled correctly.
I will make sure that happens.
I will have to say, though, on CHOP, since I wasn't part of the deliberations, I'm going to not
Abstain.
weigh in on this one. Yeah,
But it does have to have your name. It'll say abstain.
I would hope so. Yeah, it's spelled right on my screen. So
I've got 2 S's. SST.
no.
That was the correction
Yeah. Thank you.
Charlie, could you check your email? Could you email me that again? I'm not just,
Yes,
I had the wrong one. Just sitting here looking for it. I can't find. Send it to D Newfman, okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
You want to look at it now, David, before we vote?
No, I've been following it. I had it before, and I know the application. I'm good with it.
Just
Okay, so
Either one, this is where they did not ask for the area variance on the window. Yeah, I know. I progressed that.
okay, so if you're okay with it, I'll make a motion. Would you want to look, David, first?
No, it's fine. It's not coming in. There's something wrong with my machine here.
All right, well, I make a motion to approve it, to adopt it as we've edited it. Is there a second? That's Meg or
I second.
David.
Hey,
I second.
Okay, Dave,
yes.
Meg,
Yes.
I vote yes, and Brian
For the
abstains.
record, I abstain.
Okay. Next item, and then we can decide when to as much of these as we want. We could do at least one more I'm okay with, and then we can decide whether to keep going, is my perspective on this. So the next one is 539 Jefferson Avenue, which is an area variance for the case number 4820. Oh, we have 2 case number 482021. There is an error there and something needs to be fixed, but it is Fvis is 539 Jefferson Avenue. Do I have a few?
I saw a typo on the first page. The board does not have the jurisdiction to review.
Right, and should come out,
Yeah.
right. And that was actually my only comment as well, though. Charlie, you need to stick in all the dates.
Yep, will do.
Okay, now we have to discuss the variance because
So for number 1, I suggest the area variance will not result in an undesirable change as the rear yard does not abut any residential property.
the benefits sought cannot be achieved by some other method because of the size of the property and the location of the existing structures. It is not substantial for the following reasons, because I recall it was a tiny, what was the number? 1.9, oh, it is a large, it is substantial.
Right. But
The
the
area
location,
variances is not substantial because although it is large, it does not impact any,
Right.
any,
there's no neighbor back there.
right,
Actually, it doesn't even any commercial, it doesn't impact any other uses because it doesn't even impact the Metro North line. It's
Right.
like, it has no impact how close you get
right,
there.
so
to the line goes.
any other properties, leave it as any other properties.
Right.
The area variance will not have an adverse effect because it is a pool. It is not adjacent to it. It does not abut any other properties, more or less the same things we said above. And it is self-created, and then we don't have to say anything. That's it. And then number 6 should come out.
Yep.
And Abby should come out of the voting.
Yep.
Okay.
Brian, if he wants to partake, if he's caught up to speed.
Again, I did watch the deliberations for that meeting, but I wasn't on board by then, so I would abstain for this.
Okay.
Anything else, David? Do you have anything, or Meg, anything
No.
else?
No, fine.
All right, somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the
Second.
resolution with the changes that we just enumerated.
All
I'll
right,
second it.
okay, David,
Yes.
Meg?
Yeah.
I vote yes as well. Okay, that's adopted. That was quick. Now, just stopping for a second, Ashley just posted something in the chat. If you see that the response time for the NOI for Van Ranst and Mamaroneck Avenue has been extended. And my question for you is, my question for you, meaning the board members, is because neither of the next two, so we've approved this one, just leaving aside 5 and 6B, just in terms of time, so we can go as later as not as late as you guys want, or as we all want, I should say. Neither of the others is good. They're both renewals of the next two, so if we don't go to them today, they're still going to continue to operate. It doesn't affect their ability to operate. So if we go to the circulation for lead agency, Ashley posted that they've extended the time for the notice of intent until after our next meeting. So my question for all of you is, do we want to discuss them tonight anyway, since we have time and it could take some time, or do we want to leave it for the next meeting? Thoughts? I would prefer to discuss it tonight since we have some time, but.
No, I would prefer to do, this is a surprise to me. I'm glad they have extended it. I would like to take a look at the properties.
Yeah.
Even if we don't want to be a lead agency, I would like to prepare my thoughts and comments for the board.
Okay, so you want to extend it?
I probably would agree with that, and Greta, I think, probably would want to participate.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
Greta's
my
not here
thoughts
either.
exactly.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
I'd rather use the time to maybe close out some of these old cases and get them off.
well, so those two, okay, so we will definitely leave those two. That's what we've decided. So those will be on the agenda for the meeting in December, Brittany. Okay, so do we want to go to the next two items? Everyone, you still good time-wise?
What's the next one?
448 Mamaroneck Avenue, Smash Burger.
Yeah, I have a comment. Should I?
Wait a minute, everybody. David, I was checking. David, you're okay with doing it?
I'm fine.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. Okay, yep. Hold on, I'm opening hang on a second.
Yeah, I just got a function.
Let me open mine, find mine.
448, there it is.
Okay.
Second.
Go ahead.
I believe I largely made the note that fast casual is not in the code, and we should find a code term for the special permit. And I was headed for carry-out restaurant. I understand it fits all of the criteria of carry-out restaurant. I don't believe anybody on the board thought that this was a fast food restaurant. So what I suggest is for page 2, that all we need is the definition of carry-out restaurant. We should leave in that you needed the variance to be close to other establishments, but we don't need the definition of food service. We don't need the definition of fast food. All we need is the definition of carryout. And then as you go down below in the second sentence of the last paragraph on page 2, it should be classified as a carry-out restaurant, not fast food.
I don't
And
agree.
the same-
Sorry,
Okay.
but I don't think
let
it's a
me just-
carryout
I'll say-
restaurant. So let's just stop
Okay,
there.
okay, so we'll stop there. It isn't prepackaged, it isn't pre-cooked, so it's not, I would never say it was a fast food. When I look at carryout, that's why I asked the gentleman, is it mostly to eat off the premises or on? And he thought it was mostly off. So I know that the operation is such that you go to the counter and you order, and then wait service brings it to your table. But the majority of the orders are cooked to order, not pre-wrapped up, but cooked to order for consumption off the premises. To me, that
Yes.
matches carry-out restaurant exactly.
I don't think so as well, because a carryout restaurant really is just, to me, a carryout restaurant is a carryout restaurant of food that is already prepared. They prepare it to order. It is
They do.
It is not a carryout restaurant is the sort of place where you go in and you say, I'll take 3 of those in the window and 2
I'm
of
sorry,
these
no,
and 1
you
of these.
can't, you
And that
can't
to
add-
me, Meg,
Robin.
Yeah.
But Robin, you're saying what it means to you. You have to look at
I'm
the
sorry,
code.
I'm looking at the definition. I'm looking at the definition, Meg.
Okay.
For
All right, all right.
this retail sale of food and beverages, which may include grocery items for consumption off the premises. It doesn't talk about preparing food. It talks about
Right, it doesn't
already
say, it doesn't
consuming.
say
They
anything
are-
about preparing food.
correct. It is already prepared food. It is not food that they're preparing. Smash Burger
I'm sorry.
prepares the food. This is a fast
It
food
doesn't
restaurant.
say
There
that
is
it
no
has to be.
significant difference between a Smash Burger and a Burger King or a McDonald's or you order from Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's not prepared ahead of time. You go into Kentucky Fried Chicken and you order your chicken. That is a
Right, so
fast
maybe
food
those are carry out
restaurant.
as well. I'm not looking at Kentucky Fried and I'm not looking at McDonald's. I'm looking at the business model of Smash Burger. In the definition of carry out, it is silent on whether or not you do it cook to order or there's limited items and they're cooking them all the same. It is silent on that. We can't add our own interpretation of what we think a carry-out restaurant is out of all the code terms. This one, it is, Smash Burger for sure has certain items. I don't think almost anybody orders any one of them the way exactly that they are, and they don't have them all wrapped up in a heating bin to go out. Every single item they cook after you have ordered it. It may be the exact description on the menu, but they don't have 3 of them lined up and 3 bags of fries there. So, but I also would say that if it doesn't say anything about whether it has to be cooked to order or can't be cooked to order, we can't add that additional information to the definition.
Meg,
we
can
can't
I weigh
actually
in?
interpret things, so.
Can I weigh in for just a second, basically
Absolutely.
going on the exact definition?
Okay.
One of the things that I see which distinguish the 2 entities is how you're purchasing. In restaurant fast food, it says that most of the sales are stand-up services, meaning you go to a counter to order. The carry-out, it almost seems like, you could walk in and pick it off a shelf yourself.
That's
And
how I
that's,
see it.
and that's not Smash Burger's business. I absolutely understand what you've been saying, Meg. But I think that, this restaurant is similar to something like a McDonald's or Burger King in the fact that you can't pick anything up off of anywhere. You have to go. It's a stand-up service to order, even if they bring it to your table. And that right there is also a differentiator where you have to go and purchase it in that manner, and then they'll bring it to your table. So for me, I'm kind of leaning more towards the fast food than
But
than
it's
just
not, it's
carry.
not pre-wrapped. So the thing is, it says that you're going to a counter type installation. I agree. These are not great definitions, and this definitely need some work, and it's difficult, but I don't see anything in the definition of carryout that does not describe smash burger. Because the grocery items, it just doesn't have to. And I'm not even sure, they may have some cookies or something, but it's ready to consume food. It does not refer to how it's prepared or when it's prepared. Ready to consume food and beverages from a counter type installation. That's exactly what they have. You're thinking they mean a different counter type, but the words are not there, meaning, no, it's a counter type with racks and you just find what you like. It simply says a counter type installation. They have a counter type installation.
Well,
And you are
hold
getting
it. Counter type installation. There, it's not talking about buy. It's a counter type installation for consumption on the premises, and I'm wondering whether or not that's, you know, some type of sit down area at a counter where there's a server in back of the counter. I think it's very confusing.
I know, but
That's
we
the problem.
can't, you're right. Maybe it's like that, but this is where we run into gray areas. You can't, I think they mean this. If the words are not there, it's like, no, I think they mean a countertop that you're sitting with stools at the counter. It doesn't say that. It
But
says
do they
that
have, but does this smash burger have that? I haven't been in there.
when you go to Smash Burger, you go to a counter to purchase your food that you have ordered. You can order it online. You can pre-order it from a phone or something. I don't know about their website or their software, but you order it and it's made to order. You go to a counter and you then take it out to eat. Or if you go to the counter and you place your order, you sit down and you put a number on your table. And then when your order is ready, they come over and they bring it to you at your table. So you're getting the table service there, which is a requirement of carryout, which is not a part of, it's not a part of fast food. So the fast food restaurant doesn't talk about having table service. So I think that the carryout, first of all, I don't feel that it's in any way not describing smash burger. You might feel like, I think it meant the intent was something different, but I think that's a little bit slippery. I think it does, there's nothing that is not in line with what smash burger does. And the main intent is that it's a combination of taking food off the premises or having the ability to sit and have it served to you at a table. And it has both of those components. Those, I think, are one of the major components for the carryout.
So in your mind, is McDonald's a carryout or a fast food?
It would depend. I would have to look at the operation of that building, of that business model, because things evolve all the time. But when I go into thinking of McDonald's, there's usually a few hamburgers that are wrapped up in a line, and there's some fries all stuck on the heating thing. So those are in disposable containers already made in advance and wrapped up to go. And they also, it can't be carry out because it doesn't offer you, unless the building model change for a specific franchise, you don't get table service. So it would not be a carry out. McDonald's is, as I understand it, but see, I don't think you can say all McDonald's are the same or all this type of restaurant that fits a fast food. We have to look at the specific language, look at the particular location that we have and how their business model is set up, and decide if it matches one of these definitions.
I think that
I definitely would not call it fast food because it has table service, which is almost as great as taking it off premises. You don't go, yeah. So
I don't think that there's anything in the definition of fast food that says you can't have table service.
Right.
To me, the village was trying to set up three distinct or more distinct categories of food service establishments. And as I read the definitions, the distinction between the fast food and the carryout is that the carryout, it is all pre-prepared. This is how I read it. Retail, it uses the word retail sale, which implies to me it is already packaged. Normally, when you use the word, excuse me, Meg, before you say anything. Normally, when you use the word retail is a certain way of selling. You don't think of, fast food is not defined as the retail sale. To me, retail sale comes from, as I see the definition, and yes, we all interpret, not like how you see it, how I see it. You are explaining how you understand the interpretation, how you understand the definition, how you interpret the definition and its application to this site. Well, this definition talks about retail sale. Having put in the word retail sale, which isn't in the other definitions, it must have meant something. Therefore, the definition must mean retail sale, which is a counter where you walk in, you take it out of the refrigerator container, you take it out of the counter that's sitting there. It is all pre-prepared. It is all ready to be taken and eaten, whether it's taken off the premises or eaten on the premises. It is taken to be eaten from things that are packaged.
So what kind of business would that be?
Excuse me, I do not think Smash, it doesn't matter what kind of restaurant I think it is. I'm only saying what this is. This, to me, Smash Burger is a fast food. Under these definitions, it is not clearly a fast food. It is not clearly a carryout. It is like everything the definitions are for, and this looks like now, if we do not care, and we're having this big debate, then it seems to me, since it doesn't matter, we can simply say, whereas it is difficult to determine exactly what the use is, and the use is either as a carryout or fast food, period, and leave it at that.
I was going to
How about we
ask
say-
whether or not there's
how
any
about we say-
benefits. Is there
How
a
about we say
benefit
it's a
to
food
one?
establishment? How about we give a special permit for the food establishment? Can we do that?
If you recall with Chopped, this was a big issue, and you didn't want to do that. You wanted to fit it within one of the existing uses to call it something. So I think we're going to be consistent. Let's be consistent with.
No, I wanted to call it something that's in the code. I didn't want to call it a fast casual restaurant. Food establishment is a term I find in the code. Or if you want to say it's, I mean, I don't know how you say you're giving a special permit for something that's not quite this and not quite that.
Or you just say, yeah, I guess.
Is there a benefit, or is there an impact calling it one versus the other based upon the regulations of being within a certain amount of feet on Mamaroneck
Fast
Avenue?
food restaurant does have a requirement that it can't be located within 200 feet of another, but we've already given it that area variance.
But
Okay.
also fast food, as I understand it, it was always not in the C1. It could be in the C2. McDonald's is a pre-existing non-conforming before the code change. So that's why I consider other ones to make it compliant with the code as carryout restaurants. Is a restaurant, majority of it goes out, but you can also eat it there, because otherwise I feel that we are now opening something up and we're making fast food available, but this is a C2, so that it isn't in this instance.
The only thing, Brian, to answer your question is, it can't, if as a fast food, it can't be within 200 feet of another.
Right.
But again, we've already given it that variance.
But
so
carryout can't be
it's
either.
done.
But that's the same as for carryout, though. Carryout also can't be within 200 feet.
Okay, so then
there's no
there is no difference, which is why I
Then
would
there's-
say,
Then there's no difference. Then there's, so I'm just trying to see.
that's
if
why I was
there's-
suggesting we call it either. It's one of the other. We can say. Can you give, so what is the special permit finding? What is the special permit for? Charlie, do you have it in front of you open? The code definition, the code section on special permit?
For food establishments?
What is the code? What is the special permit for?
I think it's restaurants.
Well, that's what I'm
plural.
asking. That's why I want Charlie to, that's why I asked
Yeah,
Charlie to look it up.
Restaurants.
So that's what it's for. It's for a restaurant?
Yep, and then you go to the term restaurant.
Okay,
That's-
so there's a
But
restaurant. So
isn't it restaurants, I'm sorry, isn't it for restaurants plural? or is it just for restaurants?
Just pulling it up now. So it is restaurants, subject to 342-45.
And so we
Okay.
have in our definition several different restaurants. It doesn't
But
have
if-
a capital R restaurant, it's restaurants. And I
Correct.
think we have 3 restaurants, and that's why they all.
Yes,
need
but a
special
food
permit.
service establishment is not per se a restaurant. It is something different. So we can't call it a food service establishment since that's not defined in the code as a restaurant. Therefore, I think we need to say, I think let's just
You
say.
could call it a
is
restaurant, not a brew pub.
But a restaurant
But
implies
no, restaurant has. a
is sit
specific
down, has sit
definition.
down. That's different. It can't be restaurant. No question that it's not a restaurant as defined in the code. I think where it is either a, I think we have to say whether it is a fast food or and I don't see why, since the special permit is for a restaurant, we're giving it for a restaurant, whether it's a fast food or a
Alright.
carry out, it doesn't matter, and therefore we'll call it whichever. I don't have it, unless, Charlie, you tell me there's a reason we can't do that, that's what I would suggest we do.
Nope, that sounds good to me. I see really no.
Call it
I don't want to
place where you
call it a
eat.
restaurant. I'm not calling it a restaurant. It doesn't have table service. It's not a
No,
restaurant.
Meg, I'm suggesting it is either either a carry out or a fast food.
Okay,
Both of them would require the special permit. There's no difference otherwise. And we don't have to make the distinction. Let's not make the distinction and just issue it as
Okay.
is. All right, so there is one thing we need, there is a bigger change in we're not giving them any area variances.
did it say area variance?
Yes, he's got a whole set of standards in here for area variance. We gave him an area variance years ago. The area variance was not time limited. Therefore, all the references, pages 3 and 4 to the area variance should come out.
Right.
Then on page 4, when we go to the following conditions, the special permit shall expire upon any change in the use, and based on what we said before, in the use, operation, intensity, or configuration of the premises.
So just if
And we're
I,
going to use terminate rather than expire? Is
Yes,
that the word we're going
terminate.
with?
Yes.
I'm a little confused about the area variance section you're referring to. So if you could just be a little bit more specific, you said 3 and 4. Is
On
it
page
the
3,
further
pages
resolved?
3 and 4, it says, be it further resolved, the board reaffirms its findings, and these are all variance findings. They're not special permit findings. They should all come out,
Okay, just
or at least to the extent they're variance findings. I don't know, what are they?
so
Wait,
I'll
I'm
give you
sorry.
some
I don't see them as
insight.
area variance.
I'll give you some insight as to why I put those in there. Those were
Yeah.
the special use permit findings that this board previously opined on in the original application.
Oh, I see, that's what
And
they
I thought
did.
it best to put those in there since we're reclassifying the use so that we kind of bring it full circle. It's fine if the
Right.
board
I
wants
think that those
to
are special permit standards. Yeah.
But
that
we
looks good.
normally don't repeat them. We normally don't repeat them for renewals. If you look at any other renewals we grant, we don't repeat all the findings.
Right. The only reason I did it, just so you know, and I'm fine with you taking it out, is because we're reclassifying the use. So, but if you feel as though it can come out, you know.
I would prefer to take them out.
In other words, what is.
So they may not be area variance. This is probably why I was too confused what's going on. Okay, going to finding A, then we go to finding B. Finding B has to change because it is not or approved by the building inspector. We had language that we've previously used. I know I've sent it to you before, Charlie. It's something to the effect of that any work done here under shall be in strict compliance with the plans as filed with this application, but there were no plans. I don't know if that there were, I guess there were plans filed with this application, except as expressly modified by the conditions they're in, which they're not. It would be minor changes that do not affect any of the conditions or the use or the configuration or anything like that, as may be approved by the building inspector. I don't have the specific language. I'm trying to find an old resolution, but it's got to say something. It can't just be anything the building inspector wants to do.
Sure, so this was straight from this application's prior resolution, so that's why it's included.
Yeah, we've realized that those don't work anymore. We've now made the change, resolution, that some of that prior language just doesn't work. I'm trying to find another resolution if I can. That's too new, an older resolution. So let's try this one. No, it doesn't. Sorry, I'm trying to find an old resolution that has some of that, but I don't have it. I can't find it. I did find, by the way, another resolution for a restaurant with hours. So, but that's irrelevant now. I don't actually see the language. That's usually language we put in a variance language. Now, we don't usually put that in a special permit. That's what I'm looking at. It's not in any of the special permits, so I don't know that we usually have that language when we have a variance.
So
because
maybe that's what it was applicable to, because the prior resolution was also.
Right, has a variance, right.
So you can take that right out.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, and that was it. Greg. So David, Brian, or Meg, anything else?
I've added Brian to the list of votes on this, unless
Great.
you want to abstain, Brian.
No, I had actually watched all of these, but because I actually weighed in on the definition a little bit, that's fine.
Great.
Okay, someone want to make a motion?
I'll move.
As amended. I'll second that. Brian,
Aye.
Meg,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and I vote yes also.
Okay.
Do we want to do the last one? It is 10:20. I think we can do that quickly.
I have no changes. Anybody have any changes? Let's find out. It's gonna take a while.
Which one is?
I do, but it's very quick. I just think that, what is it? It's under the be it further resolved, section B.
Just for the record, note what application we're.
Oh, I didn't read. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
Case number 437 Ward Avenue is the next application.
Right. So I have one question, but then the only change I have is under item B for be it further resolved. Should we be consistent in the fact that this says
Yes.
it will expire upon transfer of ownership?
Right, shall terminate upon a change in use or other things that we've said before. But I have some other comments, some other language comments. On page 2, the clause that begins, whereas the application is a special use permit renewal.
Yeah.
It's for a special use permit renewal. It's an application is for a special use permit renewal. Okay, then we get to, and in the next paragraph, it should say, with said special use permits and will continue, and the word to has to be inserted before the word comply with. Then under the be it further resolved, the special permit, all of that, it should just, all of it about being granted with the prior, this is no longer, unless we're going to change it, we normally grant these. Oh, we didn't discuss that. Going back to the 448 Mamaroneck Avenue, we did not discuss the term of the special permit. So let's go back to that now. If we have to edit it, are we granting it for 3 years or the normal of we just extending it, right? Just making it clear, we did not put a 3-year renewal term on that, and there shouldn't have been one, but we didn't discuss it. So I'm just reminding everybody. So on this one, there's no reason for renewal, again, because as is custom, they had their first year probation, we had no issues, and therefore.
No, this one,
No.
which one are we talking about? We said we
We're
wanted.
talking about
had-
437 Ward Avenue.
Oh, Barley's.
No, 437
No.
Ward Avenue is Alice Jang.
Of course, okay,
Yeah.
we discussed whether or not we wanted a probationary period. We found that they had not been operating to the standards of the special permit until they came in for the application, and then they remedied
Wait,
that.
I'm talking,
But
Oh, which one are
Wait,
you talking
Meg.
about?
you're moving to someplace else. I wasn't talking about Barley's at all.
No,
no, I'm
Robin,
talking
Meg,
about Ward Avenue.
from the last meeting, Meg specifically pointed out that they had several code
Oh, I see what you're
violations.
saying. But so
And you
this one
had-
should be,
And you had agreed, Meg had suggested that we put them on a 3-year,
okay, that's
so
fine. I'm
that way
sorry. I
they
was
have
just,
to come back.
you're
Yeah.
right. I
And
forgot.
I also would like to ask the question that I understand that we would be arbitrary and capricious if somebody else came in and it changed ownership and wanted to set up basically the same operation and we should deny it. But when the standards for the special permit involve the owner of the company, that they had to have these licenses, that they have to have sent in information to police department and things like that. We cannot say that it has to come back for a special permit when it's in the change of ownership then. We're just hoping that the village will do its due diligence to make sure that all the massage licenses are there and that things have been reported to the police correctly. There
Well,
is no situation where you can ask for it to.
Well, Meg, let me just ask you a question on that. You know, when somebody buys something, if it's an asset purchase agreement, they're buying the business. Are you granting the special use permit to the business as an entity or the owner? You're giving it to the business, which is its own LLC probably. So I would think.
I would actually say though that the operations have significantly changed when the operations are based on the operators having the massage license. I don't know.
Except that, remember, right now, there are 2 people who have licenses, right? They've given us those licenses. The ownership can stay, whatever the name of the applicant is, I don't remember the applicant. Other people can get massage licenses. And as long as the people have massage licenses, they can continue to operate. So they have to be licensed, but we're not going to check in 2 years. I don't know how often they need to update those licenses. There's all kinds of requirements for keeping licenses.
Okay, so we're relying on our village to enforce.
Now, we can put in here something, and we can put in that, something that, an expiration, termination, if any of the following, or if any of the, or if none of the, I don't know if you want to put something in, but I don't know how what, because they can certainly change licensees. They can hire a new employee who's also licensed, and that would be fine. So I don't know that we can do anything. We could say finding that license is required.
I asked the question.
No,
It's okay.
I'm just suggesting, maybe we can put in something about, whereas I think there was something in here about license required. Maybe we can say specifically that is a condition that, a condition can be that the people have licenses or something like that as required.
That's part of that's part of the special permit standards. So, see, this
Okay.
is where it's odd because I understand what you're saying, Brian, that you buy this asset and you get the kitchen and you get the tables and the chairs and the customer base. And,
Hold it.
you know,
No,
and all the
no,
operations.
no, you're buying the license to operate the business.
Right, you're not
I
buying just.
understand. I understand that. I guess, so let's say you changed hands and you do you get their liquor license or you changed ownership, you have to go and.
Well, it depends on if you're buying their LLC. or if you're literally buying their business with their operator, or you're just buying their assets.
But then I would say then, I'm sorry, I'm jumping, I'm very sorry. But I would say then that you're not changing the ownership because you bought an LLC. The LLC is still the owner. So there was no change in ownership. You
Well,
didn't create
that's-
a new
yeah.
LLC that moved in.
Right.
I think that's getting way too, I don't think that's relevant, honestly.
Anyway, the relevant part was that it's so much based on the individuals that are running the business. And so I asked, but if there's no way, then we rely on the village to make sure that things are enforced correctly.
Yeah.
Well, Meg, I'll give you another situation which I've seen. People sell their businesses, but stay on as employees to manage and run the
Sure.
business. There's literally no change, but there's a change of ownership. Technically, people just cash out of their business and continue to run it. So I think that
sure.
it gets very difficult, and we could go down the wrong road with that.
I suppose. I always thought that you could do it with change of ownership, but if it was basically the same operation.
It's
we
the
would already
same
charge
owner,
them
it's
for
the
free,
same
but we're
owner.
not. But anyway, let's move on.
Okay, David, do you have, or Brian, do you have any comments to the resolution?
Not to the resolution, no.
Dave, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Someone want to make a motion? I'll make a motion to adopt
I'll second you.
as edited. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Meg,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
I vote yes as well. That is the last item on the agenda, since we are postponing the consideration of the the notice for the notice of intent for lead agency, and let us adjourn and see you all in a
Okay.
couple of weeks.
Super. Good night,
Have a
everybody.
great Thanksgiving, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Good
You
night. Good night.
Good night.